Hello and welcome to episode 143 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me today, Mr. Howard. How are you doing, Howard?
Very well, thank you, Greg. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. Before we go anywhere, Element Games, I've been using them a lot recently. Got a lovely War Master from them and then realised I needed some other things. So I was like, I got the War Master and then I was like, that preset mana pool was really good value. Probably should have bought it.
I'm frankly surprised that you held on as long as you did.
Well,
I was personally impressed.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, it's not going to get. I mean, it's still sitting there in its wrapper, and it will do for a while. Got a lot on at the moment, and I'm slow anyway. So it was like, am I really saving money by buying it now? When down the line would I buy it? And then was like, actually, yes, let me spend however much it was. I'm saving money by spending money. So yeah, the next week had to get one of them when they came back in, and then various other bits as well. And then there's just always something, isn't there? Even if it's not GW, like there's a new Dungeons and Dragons book out next week, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft or whatever it is. So I'm going to buy that. So
I do find that actually with Element, I do find the ability to cover all the ranges of things is very good, particularly with hobby stuff. I do think I almost find myself window shopping there. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. I'm going to need some of those.
And it's the little things like, so I ordered my copy of Curse City with them. I ordered one from GW as well. And by the time, I sent the email in plenty of time. By the time they read it to cancel the order, they'd already sent it. The Royal Mail lost the, or they claimed to have delivered the GW one, but it wasn't there. But the Element one arrived at my mate's house at like 10:30 on the Saturday, so he could start painting it for me from that moment. So I was like, I got it essentially. I got it 2 days earlier than I would have if I had to wait for the GW one, which didn't turn up anyway. But that's not their fault, and they refunded me very quickly. So when I talk about using Element and the speed of delivery, it's like that sped up me getting my models. So it does make a difference for me. Yeah. My problem with Element is, £80 is free postage. Okay, what am I at? 50. Let's get some bits. I mean, you always need bits as well. Sometimes it's useful because then you remember all those paints that are almost dried out.
I'd say that's also extra dangerous for those who are playing multiple systems, collecting or playing multiple systems. That is bad news, as I'm often finding that with whoever when ordering. I'm just thinking, there's an Underworld's warband I didn't pick up. Oh, that'll just take me over. Yeah.
Or I do think I want to play a Knight household at some point in Titanicus, so I'll just add on a box of Knights here and there when I order.
And then you've almost built it by stealth.
Yeah, exactly. But it does add up. I've got another Bellicor to buy at some point for my Demons of the Ruinstorm army.
But that is lovely, to be fair.
Yeah, it's a lovely, lovely model. There's
you
lots
can't
of cool
argue
stuff
with
coming out. So yes, Element, absolutely fantastic, and they did a really good thing. Did you see? Was it Chapter Master Valric?
Yes,
ended up being in an accident and being in hospital, not particularly well.
So quite a nasty one, by the looks of it. Yeah, sad to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I've watched a few of his videos. I'm not necessarily a fan, as it were, but no one wants to see that anyway. So I get well to him, but they sent him a load of models too, because he's doing a Primaris heavy infantry army, so he's got a lot to buy. So they've helped him out with that, and hopefully he can start hobbying soon.
I'm a fan of him purely for his enthusiasm. His enthusiasm on the whole thing is infectious.
Definitely.
And so to see someone take a bit of a blow, that's always a bit of a shame. But Element looked after him there, which is really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're hiring for staff in 2 new locations as well.
What?
Yes, Nottingham and somewhere else. I can't remember the other one, but
Nottingham. They're just picking stuff up directly and running.
Yeah, exactly. They are expanding.
Well, that's cool.
I'm good. I clicked on the wrong bit there. Let me see if I can find their while we do this. They were definitely put up an advert anyway. I'm not going to be able to find it, am I? It's always going to be. No, I'm not going to find it. So, man looks stuff up on the internet is probably a little bit much of a stretch on. Oh no, new stores. Here we go. Based in Nottingham and Sheffield. So they're looking. They were. I don't know if this is still live. They were looking for a store community managers. So 2 new stores. So
Cool.
expanding. So if you are around those areas, you're going to have somewhere else to play. That's good. I quite like the fact that someone's like, oh wow, Nottingham's got Mantic, Games Workshop, Warhammer, now Element. I'm like, they're just selling stuff. But if it's another place to play as well, then it's going to be really cool because sometimes Nottingham suffers around the fact that it's got Warhammer World, which isn't always the most kind of easy. Well, it's certainly you can't host your own events there anymore like you used to. And their opening times are slightly more strict than you can be at an independent like that, and the rules around it as well, and different game systems and everything else. So
yeah, there's more flexibility with an independent.
Absolutely,
of course,
absolutely. So that's really cool if you live in those cities as well to have another
play
option.
to them. That's
Indeed.
nice to see that coming out of lockdown as well. That's ideal.
Well, if they're decent venues as well, like getting to Nottingham is that much easier for me than getting to Stockport. And almost no matter where they are in Nottingham is probably preferable for me than Stockport, where their location was. It was fine, but the hotel we used to stay in, not far away, you always thought that someone had just was in court. It was a wedding party, but you always thought it was like, is this a wedding or is someone representing?
It's a celebration,
yeah. That hotel, we stayed in a hotel with lamps torn off walls, with holes punched into walls,
right.
with fire alarms going off at 3 a.m. Yeah, it was an experience, but it was cheap. I suppose that is the advantage.
It doesn't sound that much like the Belfry.
No, indeed. But yeah, fair play to Element. So we talked about them for quite a while. We also got Geek Nation for life insurance. So we have an advert in the thing. I won't talk too much about that, but especially over this last year, there's a heightened kind of appreciation of stuff happens, and you can't always plan for it, but you can have a plan in place if it happens. So do consider looking them up. So, Howard, you are actually trying to hobby whilst you record. Am I correct?
I mean, I was hoping to keep that on the down low, but
no.
All right,
I'm going to say it just in case some noises appear.
As I start swearing and throwing stuff across. As we speak, I am painting the trim on the legs of a Knight Lancer of House Tyrannus in the resplendent, in the 30k blue colour scheme.
Cool. In little scale.
In tiny scale, yes, indeed. In the miniature, the cutesy scale of Titanicus, as there is gaming on the horizon. So I thought we're gonna have to get some final units in it. It's amazing, despite the fact having all that time we have all had. I'm still now thinking, oh my god, I haven't got this, I haven't got that. Need to now finish that off. So yeah, there's a bit of a scramble, and I've noticed that kind of across the board. But yeah, I am working on some nights.
Yeah, I think it's been awkward. I think some people were very keen to start setting targets as soon as a roadmap was announced in the UK. I, for one, was like, let's hold on and make sure that we don't have a regression before things start, before we plan too much, because I hate changing my plans like that. So luckily, we seem to be moving on. Things seem to be going how they wanted them to. So we're not far away from our gaming club opening, and then we're only a month and a bit away from all the restrictions being pulled out, which will be really good, and big events again and all that kind of stuff. And it will take some time to get going to normal. But you're right in that I think some people definitely were waiting for definite dates before, like, I now need to paint. One thing that does annoy me, and it shouldn't annoy me because it's a little thing, was people saying, everyone's had this much time to paint and they haven't done it, or they have done it, or all that kind of thing. And I'm like, a lot of people didn't have that much time to paint.
No.
It's just something to remember that, I worked all the way through. I had a few weeks off after Jackson and stuff, but I worked all the way through apart from being ill a couple of times.
Well,
And
this is
and
it. I
I
mean, this period is not necessarily a holiday for
no,
most people by a
and
long
you know
shot.
what? Staying. I'm not saying being on furlough is easy either,
No.
but like even some of those people on furlough, I actually heard someone say, "Oh, when I go back to work, I'm going to listen to so many less podcasts." I'm like, if I'm not at work, I listen to about a fifth of the amount of podcasts, even, or maybe less. Like I'm at my podcast consumption at work is huge, so I kind of end up with a backlog of those as well, and all this kind of other stuff that builds up. Um, so just remember that it's we've been through an abnormal period of time. There is no normal. There is no you should have done this or
Oh,
shouldn't have
absolutely
done
not.
that.
No.
Like people have been stressed. Like people have been looking for work, all that kind of stuff. Uh, it's amazing what can eat out of your time. Um,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think there is a case of we've got gaming is coming up, and actually there's a chance there. I've got some Titans that I painted at the very beginning of lockdown, and it's quite nice that with lockdown now coming to a close, I'm just finishing off something to just round that out as a little force, and I cannot wait to get round a table, have a few drinks, play a few games. It's going to be great.
yeah, and I think that aspect of it. The independent characters had a couple of episodes recently, they're not quite dead episodes, and they were talking about, and it's something I've been thinking about as well. For most of us, this is a hobby we have, which is a social hobby, and the gaming is one aspect of it being a social hobby. But when you can't go and meet your mates over a game, and you might not talk about that, you might only talk about that game for 30-40% of the time you're there together, but it's a vehicle for being with your friends.
Oh, without
Um,
question.
and then, but the focus goes because you're not doing that. Therefore, you're not talking about it as much. Therefore, you're not thinking about it as much. Therefore, you don't paint as much.
Yeah.
Like so, even the people who the gaming is very much maybe their third, fourth part of the hobby, it's still an active driving force for the other parts of the hobby they enjoy.
There's no greater motivator, I don't
Mm.
think, for actually getting some things done. I mean, people have said that before. They're finding it tough to be motivated to do things with no prospect of gaming. Whereas before, an event or a gaming thing would give you a reason to say, "Oh, I just need to finish that X to finish a
Yeah,
force or whatever." Without that, you're like, "Okay, so these are just little interesting things." That's
yeah,
that's interesting in itself, of course. That makes you explore things perhaps you didn't do. I was trying out techniques I'd never done before and wanted to try for ages. So I'm a fan of that. But this is coming back to that slightly more focused. I need to get this done for a specific thing, which I'm enjoying.
yeah. And that specific thing is, as I say, it doesn't have to be events. It could just be, I really want to use this unit against my mate
Yeah,
next time, and
exactly why
that's
I'm
as
painting the thing
valid.
now.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been plodding away. Actually, been painting some Heresy, but very
Ooh.
slowly, working on
Been
my
a lot of talk
demons
about
level
your
of storm.
demons. Yeah, I was going to say some demons there with Bellacore. Is that what's fired it up, or has it been other things
No,
just in
no,
general?
so no. This has been like between this and my 40k Space Wolves have been my little kind of. I've been switching between the two, um, just trying to get stuff like on the table to paint when I've got time that haven't had an evening destroyed by like whatever it is. I work longish hours when you include my travel to and from work. One thing I have done more over the last year is more role playing games, and that period of time then sucks up an evening, most of an evening. Once I've seen the wife and we've talked, I'm not going to ignore her all evening, no matter how much she wants that. Um, so yeah, finding the time to sit down. I've got to get better at doing the half hour, doing the 1 hour, finding those little
Yeah,
bits.
I'm finding that, and it's
And,
advice that friends of mine have given repeatedly about doing that, and I completely agree. I see uh, Michael of the
yeah,
book review fame. He is fantastic at just putting in time. He is cranking through some incredible paint jobs on Underworld's warbands, and he swears by an hour or two here and there, and individually hours or half an hours even just doing little bits, and it
yeah.
works an absolute treat. But it's
I,
still quite difficult to do.
Yeah, the key is I sit down, the computer's in front of me, so I start my hour and I've lost 20 minutes. like because of bits and pieces on the computer, like just silly stuff like that.
I'm
Being a bit
finding
more
research
disciplined,
is what's stopping me there. It's like I'm
or
reading these things. I'm like, oh, I must look up the exact shade of blue that
yeah,
that is appropriate for this. And you think, no, hang on, just get on with it.
all those little things. But it's
It's all part of the fun, but you just got it's just what you're enjoying. I
yeah.
have to say, I'm enjoying painting things. I'm taking genuine pleasure out of that in a way I haven't done for a little while.
Yeah,
Actually, I'm
well,
really
that's
fired up for it.
a big thing for me. Is so I've always said I'm not a massive fan of painting, so it does become harder. But we're getting there, and fingers crossed to say we're getting my garage. I'm waiting for my next door neighbours doing finishing off bits of my garage. We'll do the inside. So once I've paid him and he can get that done, we can rearrange this room. So hopefully in a month and a half, 2 months, it can all be rearranged and set up better. I'm going to get a bigger desk. So slightly better setup. And hopefully that will help as well.
Awesome.
Because your environment is important.
It is both for hobbying and hopefully gaming as well.
Yes, yeah, and then then it goes on to try and work out how we organise the garage for gaming, which is the next step in that bit. But gaming / being open for when we have barbecues and things, so it can't just be gaming, unfortunately. And unfortunately, because it's a garage, it is a bit narrow as well. It's trying to work out exactly what you can fit in there is always fun.
It's more event gaming, yeah. Okay.
we shall sort that out. It'll be good. Hopefully, we can get some summer gaming in. But yeah, plodding along. Well, I mean, it's been a while, delayed release and everything, but we have got some news for Heresy.
Yes.
Should we start with the brand new series of articles on Warhammer community called the Legion Dispatch?
Taking over nicely from Road to Thramas in the vein of the excellent the series of articles that they've been running for specialist games.
Yeah, it's their version of Necromunda Informant or whatever, isn't it? They haven't they've just said it's regular, so who knows what that means. I'm assuming it's once a month. I'm hoping it's once a month, but it might not be. So, don't let yourself get too run away with that. But they're going to show off, showing off new models for the Horus Heresy. So when people are getting worried about what's going on with the game, they've committed to showing us new models for the Horus Heresy. It's pretty clear what they're doing. Whether it's enough and everything else, that's a different conversation, but it's there. We have Malagus the Twisted.
What a model to start it with as well.
What a cracking model! Yeah, lots of discussions about whether he's resin or plastic, which is lovely. He's the gun barrel for a starter suggests he's resin. There are lots of other clues.
Yeah, I thought the banner. There's elements of the banner and the chains and various other bits that I thought, yeah, looks resin to me.
Yeah, and then there's people who are saying, well, the banner definitely shows he's plastic, and I'm like, no, there's a lot of wishful thinking in that. I think.
Yeah.
Fantastic model. The broken scalp, the way he's holding onto that banner as a support, is fabulous.
Captures the spirit of the model, and I've seen some fantastic conversions. In fact, I actually picked up a conversion that someone did as my own Malagus now, and I loved it. I still do. I think it's a great model. People have done a great job, and yet this is still excellent. I don't look at it and go, yeah, some conversions have captured it better than that. I feel this has done a fantastic job as an original sculpt.
Yeah, I really love it. Mileage is going to vary and everything else. It's interesting. So Malagurst is a book 2 rule set model.
Yes.
So from Massacre, it'll be really interesting with the second one of these to see who we get. Because with one, we can make lots of conjecture about what this means. And at the moment, it's, someone's going to be right, throw enough, rubbish at a wall and something's going to stick. Is this them going back and making sure we've got all the characters they've got rules for? which would be fantastic, which kind of was talked about at one point,
I vaguely
doing
remember
that.
that being spoken of. Yes.
Yeah, there was a kind of an ideal to go and do that. Is it to flesh out the Isfan campaign?
Hmm.
um, which they could, well, both of those could be mixed together anyway. But if you fleshed out and made sure that you had all the relevant ISFAN options, then you could potentially set a conflict up there, or you could push the ISFAN campaign as a way of getting people into Heresy, something like that.
Hmm.
Who knows? Is it going to be a series that we're going to get equerries for all the legios?
Well, that would be
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
there's like there are plenty of logical routes this could take, and we don't know yet. But it's cool, and this was on the 15th of April. And as we say, repeat again, they generally show stuff off 3 months maximum in advance. There are exceptions to that rule, so hey ho, but generally is a 3 month period.
Yeah.
So, and we're a month
Three
away from
three
that
months.
now.
3 months or less, isn't it usually?
Yeah, generally. Now, again, some things are like the orc snakebite orc thing they showed off almost a year ago. We've only just seen um, that kind of shown up as a preview again. That's a real anomaly and probably exasperated by the COVID situation we've got and the fact that shipping has been absolutely destroyed by lack of container ships around coming out of China
Yes.
and all that stuff, which is having massive knock-on effects. Expect everything to get more expensive this year, people. GW don't give us set dates very often anyway. It's usually only big items that they announce a set date for, like an Age of Sigmar release. Like at some point, they're going to tell us they're doing that probably before they would for a regular like set of Space Marines, right?
Mm.
But yeah, there is with the current situation with everything we've talked about before, where they're moving warehouses. I mean, they didn't release anything the other day because they were doing stock takes, I think.
Yeah, I
And
heard
all that
various
stuff.
suggestions there that they had a bit of a nightmare. There was something went awry in the warehouse, which I've actually we talked about this at work. I've used them as an example before. I still think it's a remarkable feat that they are able to deploy product around the world for simultaneous launch every week, available in every territory simultaneously. That is quite a logistical, impressive feat to do that consistently all the time. A rare blip the other day, a rare blip where it went wrong.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that because when one thing gets delayed going out to Australia, say, then that upsets their worldwide release because they want it to be available everywhere at the same time. So, we don't know how many times GW have shifted around their release schedule because we don't know their
My
release
goodness.
schedule.
I tell you what,
So,
there's a point. The point of comparison there is with the Simon Games Song of Ice and Fire. Oh, goodness me! I play that game. I play it. I've got quite the collection of that. And talk about a game that is almost trying to kill itself because I mean, the releases for that are phenomenal in terms of they just get delayed in one territory, so they get delayed elsewhere, or they come
yeah,
out
and that's
wildly
happened
advanced. Man,
since it started.
yeah, it's never been improved,
Yeah,
and it's even been directly addressed by them as a manufacturer, and it hasn't yet dramatically improved. Let's talk about it, but I mean, it's so far away from what GW are doing. But they did have apparently something went wrong to the point where they were even manually picking trade orders to go out to independent stores and their own stores, and that's why we had that 2 week break, if you like. Which
I'm doing that in
there you go.
COVID, with COVID restrictions
Oh yeah,
and whilst being split across warehouses.
it had a definite feel of let's turn a negative into a positive to me. It had a definite feel of this has gone wrong. Let's just stop. Use this as an opportunity to take stock, literally, and go from there. And yeah, fair enough.
And I think it's important to remember. So, like shipping containers, like I think what was it? The value went up from about $2,000 to about 14 grand. Like you were paying
Yes,
14 grand for the equivalent of what you paid 2 grand for. for
Yes.
shipping space.
Certainly,
So
the construction industry, I'm aware, has been
and other places have
drastically
had
hit.
a lot. And we're seeing at work. I'm in the plumbing trade. Just constant emails now, and you see the same ones coming up of saying, "Oh yeah, this surcharge is happening. This is happening. This is happening. We're having to pass this on," and they're only coming through now. Because they've had this is the stock that's then been delayed. Well, I think this is going to go on for a while. My next door neighbours in construction say, you can't get hold of concrete.
Yeah.
You just can't get hold of it. So, and that's important stuff, like for
it's base
economies.
things. It's not individual like products or whatever. It's fairly base.
It's going to
items.
take a while for this to all settle down. So we are going to see. I'd be surprised if we don't see disruptions at various points through this year and maybe part of next year around GW as well, because they're having to deal with similar issues, and they have they've taken steps to help control that in having plants in various places, but there's only so much you can do before it becomes a you lose any value that you gain from doing that. So, but yeah, back to Malagurst. I think top notch.
Love it.
Absolutely top notch.
And sets off a good thing. I think it's setting off a good precedent for what we might see in the future.
Yeah, and let's keep an eye on the next Legion dispatch, and then we can start coming up with wild theories about what exactly the plan is. And it would be just funny if it's just, I really like this model and it hasn't been done yet. But
I think we said it last time, and I'm probably going to say it every time. First thing I did when I saw that was hit the like button.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
to remind them that we're fans, and because it's so easy to forget that that's a thing.
Just got to do it. There are various ways to let them know, and if you are, there's a lot of passionate people out there who are trying to make Games Workshop hear them at the moment. Sometimes you can hit them in multiple ways. So if you are going to send that email, fair enough, that's cool. Fully support the fact that everyone should be able to, reach out, but also don't forget the other ways, because it all helps. Cool. Should we talk about Warhammer Fest Online?
Yeah, I think given that we're on a trend of talking about what their news and what they've been up to.
Let's talk about the Heresy stuff first. So, Warhawk, Black Library. So they led with the Gaunt's Ghosts, and then announced Warhawk. I was a little bit like Heresy's their mainline book series,
yes,
and this is going to be and this is building up to the end of the Heresy. I think they probably should have left with Warhawk, although I'm not that surprised they led with models of a very popular system.
I can see that, to be honest. I can see models like that going first, particularly in that kind of reveal.
I think they should have been last. I think there should have been by the way.
Well, I found this slightly strange with their choice, the way that they, and this is probably true of their in-person seminars as well. They tended to they didn't save the big thing to the end. They tended to either put it they didn't always put it at the beginning, but I mean, it's certainly in those online previews, they seem to put the big things at the front.
Yeah, but I'd say bookend it. I'd say either.
Yeah.
So, like Gaunt's Ghost, the models. So, okay, if you're going to do it first because everything then comes off Gaunt's Ghost, fine, put the models first. And then at the end, go, one more thing.
Bang.
Warhawk. Boom. And then all of a sudden, and what is it? Comedians, they always do, they say their best joke first and their second best joke last or whatever.
Yeah.
Bookend it, because then if the middle is a bit weak, people forget that because the bookends are so strong. Yeah. So, but yeah, anyway, is what it's Gaunt's Ghost models, by the way.
I was surprised that Warhawk was announced. We spoke a bit beforehand. I was not expecting it. I thought, no, this isn't going to happen. We're hopeful for it, but I didn't think
we were anywhere near the time to have it released. Now, I'm just trying to go off of what Aaron's been writing about on his Twitter, and I know no more than anyone else, but it feels like he's still working on his book. Maybe. Could be wrong. I could be completely wrong.
He might be speaking about it because he's further along with it
Yeah, absolutely.
than one might otherwise think. Otherwise, he may not be speaking about it. Who knows?
But even then, so Mortis has only received its regular hardback recently. So,
Yes.
and if we look again at another 3 month period for Warhawk, say it's the end of that. So it's the end of summer, or middle of summer. Then we're looking at only about a 6 month release between, or just over 6 months between Mortis and Warhawk, which is really quick compared to the last couple.
When did Mortis Special come out? Was it
Well,
February?
about 3 months before, yeah.
So about
Before the
February time?
hardback. Yeah, about that.
Yeah. So that, I would have thought they'd be aiming something like that. February, March, basically
Oh, the very
Q1.
earliest. Yeah, the
Q1
very
next year is what I'm assuming. Q1, Q2 next year would be a possibility.
for Warhawk.
No, for
oh,
the next one.
yeah, but I don't think it'll be that quick because the others. I'd be surprised if it was that quick.
Yeah.
And maybe it will be. Maybe they can hit the end notes a little bit quicker, which will be really cool. But whatever. Either way, it is Chris Rate, so this means we have got Aaron and. People are saying they definitely heard that Dan is doing another book. I can't remember now.
Now this is going to be.
I think he's said things that can very be easily read that way, and back frankly, everyone's assuming. We assumed it from the start.
I have close friends who I know are listeners who have attended interviews with him at, I think it was a Forbidden Planet interview, where he said, "I can't really say, but I am definitely writing the last book."
Oh right, oh fair play.
So cool. It's been said, but again, that's all. That's still me saying that as a friend told me, which is exactly
absolutely.
Thing. But I'm pretty damn certain that's.
I mean, if I had to put my mortgage on any bet, it was going to be on that bet from basically when they were announced. So that's cool. And again, he's got to finish it off. I mean, Aaron's talked the amount of times about how even if he was asked to write the last one, could he? He's like, well, no, that should be Dan's. So unless Aaron's, I couldn't even imagine Aaron, even if they forced him to, doing it.
I believe there was again, same friend who's quite the Abnet fan. Attended an interview, again, an online interview with him, a general publishing one, and it was. He inferred, or rather, my friend interpreted that he's working on chapters of the final book at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've heard him basically saying something along the lines of, pretty much, yes, I'm writing the end one. But which is really cool. I mean, there were also. I remember talking to Aaron about people had guessed which book he was writing from the author's pictures. And there are certain little there are certain things that suggested right from the start that he would be writing some of Sanguinius's greater moments that certainly hold up. And he's often talked about wanting to do things like Sanguinius at the Gate and stuff like that. So all good, probably old stuff for a lot of listeners, but we have Warhawk. So we get all this information about our new book, which is that he's going to spring into action a counter-offensive aimed at taking back the critical Lionsgate spaceport, and he's also going to fight someone who's an old enemy who's now empowered by foul energies beyond understanding. So nothing new. we knew he was going to take the Lionsgate spaceport, and it was obvious he was going to face down Mortarion. But it's still cool.
That cover, though,
is fandabby-dozy, isn't it?
Well, it's a tasty one.
What I like is a lot of people have jumped on this idea of doing these very red white scars, so a lot of red on them.
Okay.
Because it's one of those things where, a lot of people won't even think about touching an alternative color scheme unless they see it.
Yeah,
they have to be. They need to
have the
allowed
agency
to do it. Whereas
I can kind of see that.
I understand it to a point. I think it's quite sad that so many people get stuck in that. I would love to see more people stretch out.
But I feel that Heresy. Yeah, I agree with you, and that's we all like to see things. But Heresy is more of a historic game than a lot of others. The joy is in the referencing the history of it in many ways, rather than experimenting with your own chapter. But I take your point completely.
What it is when an individual does it, it's never an issue. So every individual that paints, in that style is fine. When all you see is that style,
Okay, yeah.
it's like, come on, like there were 100,000 Marines, they didn't all look like that, and we know about lots that didn't look like that. But yeah, it looks fantastic. The Khan's always good. Chris is fantastic. He writes the Khan well. He's written Mortarion very well. And we're getting to some of the real iconic scenes of the Heresy.
Well, as that was announced, I believe there were tweets coming out from John and possibly Aaron saying that you are in for a treat.
Yeah,
This one is tasty, and I mean they all are, but I mean this one is.
I'm really looking forward to the afterword. Actually, the author's bit.
Yeah, interesting.
Because I talked to Chris at probably the last Black Library Weekender, where he said he told me he was working on his Heresy novel, and like how like imposing it was, on various levels and things like that. And you could kind of see when quite a few of the authors have talked about like the fear for writing these Heresy novels, and you could see that kind of in his eyes. He was like, this is a Heresy novel.
And some. This is a Heresy novel. This is a Siege novel.
That's what I mean. Sorry, a Siege novel. Yeah.
I need to go back and finish, as I haven't finished a John's afterward on Mortis. I've only read the first part of it. I was at work.
Right.
I was that compelled. I had to finish it, and I need to go back. But he mentions that, and he speaks very eloquently about that impact from the perspective of someone who's written two, which is particularly interesting. I think I agree. Those afterwards are excellent, actually, for insight into the whole thing. But yeah, very excited for Warhawk. I think that could be damn good. I think there's significant setup for it up to this point across a couple of books, and I think that's particularly interesting.
It will be really interesting to see what other aspects of the story are folded in as well, particularly because Mortis went a slightly different direction with some of its parts, and its start-finish points were not necessarily what people were expecting. So there's, we've got 3 books. We've got the amount of stuff we definitely know about is, what Iron Gate Spaceport, we're going to fight Mortarion, cool. Then we've got Sanguinius Carbanda, Sanguinius flying somewhere else. But you've got maybe 6, 7, 8 points to hit.
Yeah.
But who knows what else goes around that. So it'd be interesting again to see how it breaks down, because it's not like this is book 2. Like, they're running out of space. So
yeah. I also think it's and it's touched on in Mortis, with no spoilers, but we're entering a different phase. Yeah. We're entering that slightly more. I mean, I believe it was described as that more desperation. We're going to bring out all of the toys. We're going to bring out all of the weapons and options we have available, and it's upping the ante in that respect. And I think that's a very interesting phase to enter in. And I think this beat will be particularly interesting.
But what we know with particularly these 3 authors as well, which is where it could work really well, is Chris, Aaron, and Dan all write, all enjoy writing character perspective of events from outside of the event, and all have important human elements in what they're doing. And we've got all these big Space Marine moments happening. And we know we've still got the Perpetual storyline, and probably the Imperial Faith storyline as well. As well as, but what else are we going to see? What other bits, and where are they going to fit in that story? It's going to be fun. It's going to be a bun fight to get it again. There's no secrets to buying stuff on release days. There's being prepared, and just hoping you don't get unlucky.
I was a bit alarmed to see the Sisters of Battle twin set that went out recently, a limited one, sold out.
There were only 1,000 of them.
Well, that was my saving. Yeah. That was my consolation.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
It'll be fine. But yeah, absolutely. If you're after the limited, you need to be prepared.
Yeah, just do all your usual prep on that. nature of the beast. So
Yeah.
yes, all good. And then we had, what else did we have that was heresy in that? Well, nothing. But we did get one. I
No.
tell you what, one thing we did get is a really cool in the 40k Sisters of Battle day on the 40k day 2. We
Oh yes.
got a twin. Was it Astrid Thuraga? But more importantly, she comes with Agatha Dolan, who is, what is she? She is
An
a
incredible utilitarian
Hagiolator.
model. Yeah.
Recorded by her Hagiolator, Agatha Dolan, who accompanies her at all time. This is a a dudette with an inquisitorial eye staff and a book, and could be used as a remembrance. You could easily put a third eye thing across her head.
Navigator,
As
Astropath,
astropath,
loads of stuff.
navigator,
Yeah.
psyker, like it's unfortunate. I think there's going to be a lot of these banner ladies being sold separately on eBay just to get the
Oh
her little
yes.
friend.
Yeah, it's an incredibly versatile model. I think that one. I think that, and it says a lot about what those what that direction is. But I think certainly people are going to jump all over that, and regardless of which system people play.
Yeah, it's
I
so
think
cool.
people will be all over that model. Yeah, so that was a nice little surprise to come out of that.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get any Heresy news. I wasn't necessarily expecting. There was a little bit of hope that the Age of Sigmar preview would be Heresy, but
That fairly
that was.
quickly, I fairly quickly squashed that in my
Oh
own
yeah,
head. I
big
thought
time.
actually there is no way, particularly after day one when they said the next, this is the name of the next Broken Realms book for Age of Sigmar, and it's the last one. And I thought, okay, well then you are clearly going to have to tell people what's coming next. We know Age of Sigmar is coming up. It's a 3-month window, as you say. It's logical. That's the summer release.
Their 40k Age of Sigmar releases of July. They have been for donkey's years. They're not going to release another game system too close to that.
No,
because that would be stupid.
It's not a game system. The significance of Heresy. They would not release that now because we saw the next. They call it a starter box, but it kind of isn't for Aeronautica, which I thought was a very interesting that all of the Space Marine flyers, which are finally released for Aeronautica, are cross-compatible with Heresy.
Yeah, I think people are jumping on that very quickly as well. I think most of the flyers you think of for Space Marines in 40k are not. They're not proper flyers. Like
True.
They're more they're combat craft like kind of thing.
The one that surprised me was the Storm Eagle. I'm really surprised that wasn't the Storm Raven because I thought those models were produced by Games Workshop Studio Main, so I thought they would be face focused.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying is the scale is that different. Like they're a bit smaller, and their job roles are slightly different.
Slightly, but they're very similar.
I was surprised it wasn't the Fire Raptor, but they obviously wanted some troop. But you've got troop transports in the Thunderhawks. But I suspect we'll see a Fire Raptor come.
Fire Raptor's perfect resin model.
Yeah, absolutely.
That to me, it's the equivalent of the Vulture, isn't it? I mean, it follows the same model. I think I will see that.
Hello, Noose. Sorry, Magnus has come to say hello, like he likes to do it this time of night. Yeah, you're not part of this anymore, mate. Fantastic models. Really great for the AT players.
Absolutely.
If you want to spend some money on.
There's an increasing number of people playing 30k.
Fan-made 30.
Epic scale. Yeah. It's a great scale. Models not depending. To represent Legion War. It's a fantastic scale for that. Yeah. Epic was my first game. I will always sing it.
If you want to have a spaceport you're playing fighting over in Titanicus, then you can fill it out. If you want models to represent strafing runs and all that, you've got even more of them now. If you want just basing kit or stuff that adds height to some of your models, all that stuff, they're plastic so far. All those ones we've seen as well.
Quite good value as well, frankly. I mean, particularly when you start comparing it to the cost of resin bases. Yeah.
So, crash stuff for crash Thunderhawk as an objective.
Oof,
that kind of thing then becomes really affordable. The Thunderhawk being in plastic was really cool. I wonder if we see a Stormbird in resin.
Ooh, Stormbird. Yes, actually. Well, no, I don't know. It might be plastic actually, because they've done things like the Mega Bomber.
Yeah, who knows? Like, who knows? But the fact that they've done the Thunderhawk in plastic was, they've gone to that scale in plastic, which is really cool for us.
I think I misspoke there. Actually, I think the Mega Bomber might be resin. But
Yeah, I
I'll
think
look
it
it up.
might be. It's in about
Mega
100
Bomber,
million
but
pieces, I think.
it's the one down from that.
Yeah. So a Stormbird in resin, they could do it. I think they missed it. I suddenly had a thought on Friday. I was like, imagine if the big reveal on the Saturday was a plastic Thunderhawk in 28mm scale.
I saw you message about that.
It would have been the greatest reveal ever because of how angry people would have got with a little plastic one, and how outrageous Games Workshop were to do that. Which if you're watching a boxed games stream and you're expecting to see a 28mm scale Thunderhawk, then I'm not sure what boxed games you're playing, but but yeah, they missed a trick on that one because it would have been beautiful. But Fest. So it's interesting. It was 6 days of these little hour and a half each kind of things with a bit of chat. And a lot of people were very disappointed in many of them. I think a lot of that was because they brought their own expectations based on Games Workshop bigging up these streams. Well, I haven't seen a company who have ever gone, oh, we've got a minor little thing to tell you about. They don't. You big up everything you do. Games Workshop always really hype stuff they do. They've done it for a long time. There's a lot of experienced people who still fall for that and expect more than they show.
I agree. I do
they
think
could tone it down a touch.
I do think there's a certain amount of managing. Build hype, yes. I mean, I've sort of seen people talk about this. Build hype, yes, but manage. It's like putting it as a mystery reveal allowed people to speculate.
But how do you announce that without giving it away? Then
you tell them it's an AOS day.
Yeah, and everyone goes, "Oh, brilliant!" So that's no, I don't think that works. I don't think that works.
Yeah, but you wouldn't get people speculating over Eisenhorn, over Heresy, over Kill Team, over you had multiple communities there, call it as you will, fans of certain things speculating that it was their time in the sun, and it wasn't. And then they were all disappointed. Age of Sigmar fans like, yeah, great, multi-system, whatever.
I think part of the issue is when they do Fest, they can announce a surprise, and people will turn up at Fest, and it's not so much of an issue because it's not like that's not the only thing happening.
Yeah.
Cool, brilliant. 40K is being released over there, but I can go and look here at the same time because it was focused. You have that issue, so there is an element maybe of that. I agree with that. It's really sad.
It's just a point. Yeah.
My mate messaged me on the first day and said, "Oh my word, the chat." And I went, "Yeah, you just don't look at the chat. Like, why are you looking at the chat? Just it's pointless." Like, I agree. No one talks. It moves too quick to actually be anything anyway. So, just don't bother. What's really sad is the amount of, "Oh, this is rubbish." Like, Age of Sigmar is rubbish. It's like, we're on an Age of Sigmar day, dude. Like, come on.
It's utterly pointless. I don't really understand why.
But that's never going to change. Like, that's the same no matter where you go with Twitch or YouTube comments, right? It is what it is.
Yeah.
You're right. I think GW, the problem is it works. It seems to work. Building up hype like that seems to work. So
nothing wrong with that. They're going to carry on with it. I just think there's ways it could be slightly improved in terms of that, but overall, fine.
Yeah, as experienced gamers, right, we shouldn't be getting too caught up into too much of that. What gets me is I've seen.
I quite enjoy getting hyped up about
No,
things.
We shouldn't get too caught up into building the hype up to a point where you can only be disappointed. Like it's measuring expectations and all that. What has saddened me actually is watching. I said this to you before we started. Some people who are prominent in the hobby whose reactions are beyond kind of upset, frustrated. So frustration's fine. You're allowed to be frustrated. You're allowed to not like what they've done. because you wanted your thing to a point, and you're allowed to say to GW, "Hey, you didn't even mention Heresy," and that's cool. That's fine. That's groovy. When you're on, when you're someone in the hobby who has followers, who's prominent and whatever, I find it frustrating that those people sometimes have gone on to whatever, and they didn't even mention our game system. It's dying. And it's like, okay, well, so they didn't mention Blood Bowl either. I doubt they're getting rid of that. They didn't mention Lord of the Rings either. I doubt they're getting rid of that. Like, we can name 4 or 5 different systems here. And then they build again on, or they've definitely given up on Heresy. It's like, well, again, we've announced, like they've announced with Legion Dispatch that they're going to release, like, and these people know this, and it's not even that, like, because some people will do that to troll. Yeah, cool. I can just ignore that. That's fine. These people aren't doing it that way, and I'm not too sure how to counter it. To the point where, and you know what, I kind of don't want to. I'm just like, whatever, you do you. But what's sad is when you do that on the biggest Heresy forum on Facebook, or you do it somewhere where it's really visible, people again feed into that. And probably people listening to this, because of the way I've talked about this for years now, and Games Workshop have to hold their hands up to an aspect of allowing that to happen. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying they're perfect, but someone new joins Crusade and Heresy and starts seeing all those kind of messages, and they're like, okay, well, this bloke who's got 3,500 followers on Twitter who posts Heresy stuff is now saying the game's dead. That's not it's not great for us. And as I say, managing expectations, like, it was, if you had to put a pound on anything on that Saturday, it was Age of Sigmar being revealed. Yeah, the old world, people talking about the old world. The old world's still years away from being ready to release. And we're lucky we get to see what we see of the old world already. And we only get to see that because of, I believe, because of the success of games like A Song of Ice and Fire. And GW wanted to say to people who were going to go, wallet deep into those games, whoa, you just hold on to your wallet there. We're going to ruin that in a couple of years' time. Thank you very much. And some people did. Some people will have gone, yeah, I'm all in for the old world. So I think that's the only reason we know the old world's coming. You don't get, we're not going to get like anything around Age of Sigmar. They're going to let that dominate that period, that quarter of sales. Of course they are. Now, they traditionally have had a October-November release schedule where they release something decent size. I think those kind of timescales are looser now than they used to be 3-4 years ago.
Even more so. Yes, not only are they looser, but there are other factors this year in particular.
Absolutely. But we know we've got a 2021 Heresy project that Anuj worked on. We know, repeating myself again, we know we've got Legion Dispatch coming out with models. But
I think what your point there about how do you counter that sort of attitude where it's perhaps frustration boiling over or otherwise, which then manifests as quite an antagonistic almost type of thing. I think reason, you already did it, and even there, because someone mentioned something I saw on Facebook where they said this is the first Game Fest, Warhammer Fest Games Day, call it whatever, since 2012 where they haven't mentioned anything to do with Heresy. And that I just that resonated a bit with me. I was like, yeah, okay, that is a bit disappointing. It wasn't mentioned. But you can't expect, as you say, as soon as I hear you then say, yeah, well, hold on, they didn't mention Blood Bowl either. They didn't mention this. They didn't mention Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is still up there as a core game, above even box games, alongside the others. That wasn't mentioned at all either. That sort of reason, I think, helps counter the fervour that one might feel and disappointment one might feel. And say, oh yeah, actually, fair point. Got to have a bit of perspective. It's perspective. That's all.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. Like, where would we be without COVID? Like, I think probably we would be where we are going to be in about 8 months' time, right? I think Heresy suffered big time from COVID because you know what? If you're restricted on what you can release, you're restricted to what you can work on and what models you can put out. Are you going to work on Heresy where everything's resin? where it's hard to do, where all those issues that come with it, or are you going to bank? Yeah, or are you going to bank on and where only a certain percentage of people are into it? Although lots of people like it, how many people buy it? Or are you going to bank on Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar, which have made your company worth hundreds of millions of pounds?
Age of Sigmar in particular.
So you have to
dominating,
and that's not just it's not just Heresy. It's these Aeronautica Imperialis releases are first news they've had in a long time.
I've heard a lot of people theorise that game was finished.
Exactly. Again,
and then lo and behold, bang. Quite a massive release.
But again, when you're moving warehouse, when you're restricted on how many models you can make, are you going to make a load of Eldar flyers for Aeronautica Imperialis, or are you going to make a load more Space Marines, which you're going to sell?
Yeah,
which everyone wants. Like it's core business decision. If things are squeezing them on production scale, then like when your body's cold and goes, oh shoot, I need to heat a bit, it heats the important parts in the middle that keep you alive. And that's what Games Workshop do as a business, as a sensible business. They go, this is what, if the worst happened and they had to drop Aeronautica Imperialis and Heresy to make sure that 40k and Age of Sigmar are there, then kind of worst case scenarios we're talking about here, then they're going to be a lot better off doing that than dropping Age of Sigmar and keeping 2 or 3 of their box games. Yeah, it's a basic business decision.
It wouldn't work in that way, would it? Like you say, I come back to. I mean, seeing Malagos come out, I think they could have saved that for Fest. We see a lot more as well. We see a lot more regularly. I mean, I was amazed they released the reviews of those 2 quite stunning Slaanesh sort of greater demon things. How they didn't save that for a Fest type reveal previously? We'd have had a radio silence for a month, if not more, probably 2 months before a Fest, because it would have all been coming out there. And that used to happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a massive character in Warhammer. You're absolutely right.
That was all released well before there, whereas previously it would have all been held back.
We've got 2 more previews this month. Now, there's a chance that we get some other stuff in that. There is also a chance that when your focus is on the release of a game system, you don't drag too much focus away from that game system.
No.
So they've shown us 3 or 4 models essentially from the new Age of Sigmar starter set. The chances are we're going to see the bad guys from that set in one of those, and then who knows? But probably Age of Sigmar as well. So, there's a little bit of me that hopes that we might get something else within that. They might be a mixed preview that is dominated by Age of Sigmar with 1 or 2 things added on. Because I could see them doing that and throwing a bone out to 40k probably.
In many ways, probably. But I'm more at good because we've got this battle box thing coming with Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, etc. Well, there's stuff like that. In many ways, I don't want there to be any heresy at those things now, because I'd actually rather it be kept quiet, because that would make me feel that there's something more significant coming later. Much as Age of Sigmar had to endure, that sounds such a title to say, but kind of went through when 40k was being released.
Yeah, and you know what? Who's to say they aren't planning another preview show for two months' time down the line? I can't believe we're that far off Jagatai being shown off.
Well, quite. I think the time when they release Warhawk will be a very interesting one.
It would be amazing. It would be a killer move from GW. Whether they're in the position to do that or not, no idea. But if they could go, by the way, next week, boom, boom, Warhawk and Jagatai,
that would be stunning.
Winner, chicken dinner. They are on. That would be on it. I say, I have no idea, but the Lion was shown off a long time ago. It was shown off before release.
Was that a Fest thing?
It was a preview. No, they didn't do a Fest preview.
Was a preview.
But they did
it was a preview that was equivalent to one of the major shows.
Something like that, yeah. So, it's been a long time. And it would be great to get the final Primarch out there. Especially if they are going to change things up. I don't necessarily think it matters whether they complete stuff in bunny ears, but there's a lot of people who would be very satisfied if everything was like, if he came out and we've got all the legions, and then we had a revision of the rules. That's a very neat bow to tie around things, but it's not really necessary per se.
Also, there's a revision and there's a revision. These sorts of things. It
Yeah,
may
absolutely.
not be a revision; it's just be a tidy up or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I use revision,
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that was just
in a very loose term.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. We're going on conjecture, but we're basing that conjecture on things we can see in a logic process that we can see, and it'll see more and more items being pulled off and changed to the 30 codes as well.
Still a fascinating aspect to that, and I think that does seem to say something. I mean, it may not point to any future release, but it does at least point to a stability.
And this is where I feel like if I have got someone who is, because the problem is I've got a friend who loves Games Workshop, but isn't necessarily on the forums, and some of the ones he goes on, like he gets a lot of his information from YouTube videos and things like that, which is cool because he'll come to me and go, Perturabo did this, and I'm like, okay, it didn't quite happen that way, but like in essence you're right, but actually there's this and this and this, and he's like, which channel have you been watching, like what
was the phrase they used? This is a tangent. What was the phrase? There's a character in WandaVision where someone summarizes what happens in one of the Avenger movies, and he says that's a massive oversimplification, but essentially that's the key points.
Yeah, exactly. And that's and this is the problem where I've had, like, I would love to do a lore based YouTube channel, but I know that what works for YouTube probably doesn't work for the kind of lore, getting the lore done in a way that I think would be better, like kind of
in the way that you want to do it justice.
Yeah, and to get it right, and to like, people can have opinions. It really annoys me when people just completely misunderstand or misinterpret or kind of the way they put it across is completely wrong. Like, but there are many who are completely wrong. There are opinions out there as well. Sometimes they are wrong, but the nature of people don't like listening to an hour and 30 just lore. Most YouTube channels that do a lore thing break it down, and therefore it becomes harder to do. But that's why. But if you want to catch up, if you were like, I don't know much about the Heresy and what the Iron Warriors did, so I'll look up these YouTube videos, and there's 3 20-minute sections. Cool, perfect. So it works. It works for what it does, but then I do get frustrated, and that's just my mental makeup, I know. And my mate comes to me and goes, this happened, and I'm like, well, we need to go back.
Yeah,
we need to go back. It's much cooler, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's part of the fun. But he comes to me and he says, I've seen this online, and I'm like, oh yeah, you've seen that because of this section of the fan group believe this. And so he'll say things like, I don't think he's ever said, are they doing any heresy anymore? But it's been that kind of thing because he sees that stuff. And I feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall to try and say it every time. It's like, well, like they've done this and they've done this, and it wouldn't make sense to do that. And they've still got, I'm pretty sure Dimmy is writing on the Heresy team on rules, and they brought him in before Anuj. I'm pretty sure. It's been a long time since I've sat and chatted with Dimmy. I did that before he went back home for a few years, but I'm pretty sure his Heresy lore is very good, and I'm not 100% sure how good his lore is on the other stuff. It could be that he's absolutely up to scratch with all the 40k and whatever else he needs to be as well. That is fair, but again, if I had to put a pound down on something, when he joined, I was like, I wonder if he's joined the Heresy team. Or whether, do they have such a strict team? Is he going to be across teams? But who knows? There's lots of changes that have gone on with that, with things like painters work across teams and stuff. But I think the lore stuff will be set. Neil, I was trying to remember his name the other day. Neil, when people talk about, it's one of those things like, people talk about, Anuj has left, the lead writer's left, and I'm like, hold on, Neil's still there.
Yeah, I was going to say,
and that's something where Neil doesn't talk, Anuj talks, people then talk about Anuj and not Neil. Therefore, people think Anuj is either the only writer or the main writer. And that's not to diminish what Anuj has done, but I was like, I'm sure they announced, a reasonable time after Alan died, that Neil was the lead writer, and they were bringing in someone with him, and they also still had Emma. Was it Emma
It
at the
was Emma,
time?
yeah.
And she's not there now. I don't believe, if I recall correctly. But Neil's Neil's lead writer, and Neil's worked on every book from book 2. So when you're bigging Anuj up the whole time, do remember that Neil's been there. And when you're slagging off book 7 book 7 got slagged off because Alan died, it obviously can't be any good, kind of thing. It's like, well, they still had people who were working on those books you really like. It's not like they just turned around and went to the cleaner, oh, can you write us some rules and law, please? Right? Yeah, these are people who are still respected and that kind of thing as well.
Style, yeah.
Exactly. So, there's, as with all these things, there's a lot of rubbish that gets talked about online, not necessarily intentionally. And you know what? I get stuff wrong. It happens and sometimes I misspeak, and then that, in my head, I think I've said something, and in my words come something else. My wife will tell you it happens all the time. So, and those things then get repeated, and then all of a sudden they become the truth. So it's, it happens. I find it frustrating, just as a character type. I find it frustrating.
I think that's just the nature of being across these multiple platforms as well, and being clued into. You're seeing them perhaps more than others do, but that doesn't make it any less in terms of its.
What annoys me is, so there were lots of that. The Age of Sigmar announcement, there was quite a few 40k players who were in there going, "Oh, no one cares, all the usual stuff." Right? Yeah, okay, mate. Well, you've realised this isn't for you, so just jog on. But the kind of people just spamming their cap locks, Heresy, answer this now, all kinds of things. It's like, hey, what do you expect from the Warhammer community team? That's like standing at customer service at McDonald's and expecting them to give you a reason why they stopped doing the burger you used to like as a company. It's just not going to happen. And I saw someone on the Crusade and Heresy was like, I just got this standard automated response when I emailed the customer service team. It's like, yeah, because they can't answer your question. Now, should you have an answer from someone else? Different topic. That's fine. We can engage in that, but don't expect the customer service team to be able to tell you anything beyond what they've been told they can tell you.
Yes.
So,
or more specifically, it's not barely even the customer; it's the marketing team.
Yeah, or the marketing team in this case with that as well, who essentially are given these are the things you will be talking about. These are the things you will be showing. That's your thing. And Adam Choke says at every live show, we're not going to tell you release dates because we don't do that. And don't bother asking us when the next Primarch's out, because we're not going to answer about what's the next army. We're going to tell you what we tell you. Ask us questions about that aren't about release dates, and we can engage. And invariably, 3 people ask, when's the next Primarch out?
That is even more prevalent in an online thing where you've got 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people joining. That used to happen even when you had 200 people in a room that had paid a substantial amount of money to be at that room.
Yeah. And in a Heresy room.
But this is what I mean. People who you can argue are a more seasoned.
Exactly. And it used to have, exactly. So it's going to happen online, where all you have to do to talk online is to have a subscription to Twitch, which if you've got Amazon Prime, you might not even have paid for. When you go to Warhammer Fest and you do that, there's people who haven't been to many of these things. As you say, when you go to a Heresy of Weekender where you've paid extra money and, in the main, I'd say 80% of those people minimum know what they're getting into, people will still ask the same question. And you're like, dude, Like,
it is easy to forget how many people are at those things for the first time.
yeah, and exactly, and that is why you can't just turn around and say, "Shut up, dude." But
No, that would be outrageous. But yeah,
you used to get, and it stopped. Heresy Weekenders, it got less and less because people, a lot of people did go repeatedly and they did learn. But you'd have halfway through the seminar, and it'd be like, "When's this out?" And you just hear half the room go, "Oh," because that question
yeah,
got asked again, and it's hard not to do that, but we shouldn't do it because, as you're right, that person, it might be their third day in the hobby.
yeah, quite. Yeah.
So there is a balance to be had, but the heresy response was the worst response that I saw.
Interesting. Okay.
It within that, like with the vitriol.
I didn't pick up on that. Well, in what platform was that?
I must admit, I was looking at some of the chat and just I saw the little bits, like, and it was aimed at because there was no mention of heresy. What they could have done? They could have said, by the way, we haven't talked about Blood Bowl heresy, blah 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 blah, but you're going to get your time down the line. That, I think, that would have helped a little bit just to mention
it. Would, but they just don't. They just
No.
don't do that, do they?
No,
They just.
but that doesn't
I
mean they
agree.
shouldn't.
That shouldn't do it. Absolutely, they'd absolutely agree. Yeah, and
because
that's
then
about managing that expectation again. I think
because
they could
then
have done that ahead of time.
because then if someone goes, "Oh, they didn't even do it," you can go, "Hold on, dude. They told us we're getting stuff, right?" And then we've got that helps us to reply to these people.
Yeah,
and
I
say,
think I come
actually,
back to that point I was making earlier. They essentially, by saying that was a mystery day, and I could see what they're doing with that. I could see the best intentions behind that. But the downside of that was that you had 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks ahead of time, they announced that was happening, of people speculating what a mystery day was.
So there is an argument, and it seems a stretch, but there's potential. If that was 40k 10th edition, and say a few years' time, right, when we're going to get 40k 10th edition, whatever edition, blah blah blah, like that's a banner day for Games Workshop. Yeah, they sell a lot, and their quarterly stats look a lot better when that release comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, is there an argument that if you're an investor and they let on too early, that you can then go and buy stock to sell on a few months later, and then it becomes an issue of insider trading? Very loosely, not quite right, but does it cause problems in that respect? Like, is that something that they have to think about? Potentially,
Yeah.
as a large company, they keep secrets for various reasons.
Yes, it's less now the issue of people getting jump on them, releasing other stuff around them.
Yeah,
that's less of an issue, but there are factors at play, aren't there? And it's also about you announce stuff too early and then you can't deliver on it.
there's
You
always
are made
that,
to look like an absolute Charlie.
But you are right. They've never quite got the hang of managing expectations. When
I think they're getting better, but it's not
accused
it's not
of announcements for announcements is always a fun one. I don't necessarily have an issue with that, but because it is a frustration. If you big stuff up, they've got a 19-day countdown on the Age of Sigmar website, which I'm assuming is when they're going to be showing off the next preview.
Right, okay.
And that's an assumption. I don't know, but there's a countdown going on, which is, I think it was at 19 days when I first heard about it. So, whatever's going on in 19 days, if they announce an announcement, it's probably going to be Age of Sigmar. But Games Workshop, there's probably a corporate level as well where they've just put in rules to say, like, we can't do this, we can't do that, and maybe that doesn't always link either. But hey, should we move on from Fest?
That was Warhammer Fest.
Yeah. You know what? Next year we're all going to be. I also think people who. So I was watching Warhammer Weekly, their review of the announcement, the Age of Sigmar announcement, and Vince on there was talking to his co-host about Warhammer Fest because as an American, they have a preconceived idea of what Warhammer Fest is, that it's like their conventions. It is not like their conventions. Warhammer Fest is a day and a half, essentially. Saturday, what was it, 10 o'clock it opens or whatever, and no, Sunday's 10, so it's like 9 to 6 or whatever on a Saturday, 10 to 5 on a Sunday. Well, the last 3 hours of that Sunday, not a lot is happening because they're doing Golden Demon, right?
Yeah.
So you've got half a day at best on the Sunday. The information we got this Warhammer Fest is online is probably not a great deal different to what we've got. I think we would have had a few more, like we would have had something Heresy and something Blood Bowl, and it would have been more filled out. But I don't think we would have got much more information from a Warhammer Fest.
No,
No,
I don't think so. There's something about. It sounds weird. I found just reflecting on it, you do get this sense of almost discovery. It sounds lame.
Yes.
But when you're walking around there and you suddenly see something in a cabinet, oh my god, look at that! Oh, that's exciting. And there's something about it, but it's probably just about the energy you get from being in a room of other like-minded people.
There's also an element of the way the information comes out and everything else, that when you then split that over a 6-day period, it feels like you're not getting much information. And that was a complaint that was like this. Yeah, it probably didn't need to be 6 days. The fact they tried to break it down and not have because the 40k one would have been a longer one. Well, actually, just break it down over 2 weekends like they did previously with a double weekend. I think could have worked. Like to have a 4-hour Saturday and a 4-hour Saturday again.
Yeah, or do. Tricky, isn't it? That's quite a big commitment of time for people.
Yeah, but people will do it. Like
they will, but they probably got more. I thought doing it at 6 o'clock was a good idea rather than the middle of the day. That seemed to appeal to a wider international audience.
Yeah, and it's hard because they wanted those little studio dev bits in there. But yeah, the balance of having 6 days of it, I think, was an issue.
It was too much. Yeah, I think 3 or 4.
The Black Library one was fairly good though.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best.
I thought a lot of people were expecting that to be not such a high level of excitement. I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, so interesting to see. I mean, hopefully they won't have to do anything like this again for Warhammer Fest. But it's awkward. I think we're going to see more preview shows, though. I think they're going to carry on.
Yes, and I think because the reach is so much greater, I think they'll want to carry on with that.
Yes. So, yeah, okay, we will move on from that. There's only a couple more things that are going on. Warriors of Unity Kickstarter. So I've come off the page now. I was on it on Facebook. So we have got the Oz 30k guys. I'm trying to remember what the Facebook page is called now. But they've got a Kickstarter coming out. Let me have a look. Australia's Ultimate Sector. That's the one on Facebook. So you can go on there and find out this information. They have got some models that are coming out which coincidentally could possibly be used for your pre-heresy war. What are they called? Oh my word, my brain's gone fuzz.
Thunder Warriors.
Thunder Warriors, that's the one. Yeah, they could stand in for Thunder Warriors very easily.
The good question is, what's the faux Latin name for them?
The faux Latin name. Oh, the I can't remember off the top of my head.
That was going too far. Yeah.
No, I do know it. It's there.
My hobby nerd inside me is screaming that I should know this.
I do know.
We'll come back to that.
I'm too knackered. It begins with a C, I think. But anyway,
it does. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. It's there.
Not Custodes. It's not Astartes. It's. Okay. We'll come back. We'll circle back.
So the you can head to their little preview. So if you go via the Facebook, they've got links. But it's on Kickstarter. Warriors of Unity 28 mil. It's going live on the 18th, I think. So if you're after some funky stuff to use for maybe a unification style war, and you want some third party figures that will fit very well into that, then go and check them out. They've got various pledges, and also as well, if you pledge through them, you will have the chance to add on previous Kickstarter models they've done as well, which is cool.
Some very compatible models there as well for
Yeah,
Heresy Gaming.
Lots of cool stuff, and Andrew's been doing lots of good stuff for the community, and money raised goes back in basically to doing these kind of things. He's not making millions off of it. They're very cool, and they've had success as well. The other thing is, it's important, I think, with Kickstarters, like he's done a few of them, so you know that he's going to deliver if he can.
There's been some excellent conversions I've seen going around recently of people taking Stormcast as a base and mixing those with Marine kits to make Thunder Warriors and appropriate helmets, and they do look good. But the challenge always with those is how do you make them particularly that sort of steampunk techno barbarian feel?
Yeah,
I feel they've captured that very well with this particular.
I don't know what you mean. These are Hustus line cohorts.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I mean, these are a particularly good mirror of that. Coincidentally, it's interesting that they happen to have achieved that.
Yeah, Contagious.
There it is. I knew it would be churning away.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't. I think my memory's getting worse. I've headed to football too many times.
We'll wade in on the pronunciation that day.
Yeah. Just wanted to shout them out, and kind of want to use it. So, well, I'll talk about. So, Mournival Events have been making fan content as well, and they've got their various books out for running different alternative rule sets and making additional units. It's fan-made rules. Well, one thing they did do was they made books to sell, or sold books, should I say. Again, not necessarily as a money-making venture, but they got a cease and desist, and I saw some people talking about it. And I think it's one of those things that people should just be aware of. Obviously, a lot of people very against Games Workshop putting out a cease and desist, but where we talked about they're a corporation, anytime your IP is being used and sold, then if you allow that to happen, you will eventually lose control of your IP. So, as a company with shareholders, it's a bit different if you run your own little store. Like, you've got much more leeway in what you want to do. But the shareholders of Games Workshop, if you told them you lost control of your IP, they would not be happy. And so they have to defend it. And then people say, well, they're only a small thing, not trying to make any money. It's kind of irrelevant, because if they do it on a small value, then someone with a slightly greater value then goes, well, they've done it. And then someone with a slightly greater value then goes, they've done it. And all of a sudden you've lost control of your IP again. So it's just one of those things. We've got this Thunder Warrior-esque style soldiers being sold off, that they can happily be used in a Unification War era gaming system for 30k. But they also are fundamentally on their own in all of their text, and the stylings are different enough that's fine, and that's cool. And you just have to approach things the right way. If they sold the digital, if they allowed people to have access to because the digital content for that is all fine. Like the cease and desist is for the physical product, because having fan-made product is not a problem, unless it's causing issues otherwise. Having fan-made, if they then gave away the files for printing and people went and printed their own, that would be fine as well, because that's not them.
There's also an issue there with sort of the product, and this is a conversation we've had about sort of 3D printing previously as well. But when it's possible to purchase a product like that, and it starts to blur the line of whether it's an official product or not, because it's such a good product, and they did such a good job with it, and one has to sort of laud that. But when it's that good and it could be confused with an official product, but perhaps doesn't meet the quality standards or isn't as available, and people say,
Yep.
well, I want to be able to get this, and goes into a Games Workshop and asks for it or something, that becomes problematic because you've lost control of it. And I think that's true of most industries, I think, when you've lost control, or rather it's in danger, causing confusion. I mean, it was something happened with some Nike trainers, I think, the other day, where someone released some and they sold out instantly, but they weren't officially licensed. And it was the ability to think that people think they were such a good production that people would think they were the real thing. That was a problem where they'd fall short of the quality control because they'd have no direct control over
Absolutely.
it.
And
so it's a problem, isn't it?
Yeah. And also there was then why can't you license these people to do it? And they could, but they're not a company in that and they're not a company of significance. And I hate to say that in that way. But
has there been a case where they've licensed a product? Yeah, well,
I don't think
obviously
so.
they're licensing video games. Oh, no,
they've got lots of licensing.
A rival company, do you? You don't license a rival product.
Exactly. So that's one issue for starters. Also, when you license something out, you are you again making sure they protect your IP.
Yeah.
So and not just your IP, but the quality of product again, because this it all becomes part of that issue. When you're talking about, people again say, why aren't they 3D printing? Why aren't they putting STL files out to 3D print? You've also got the issue of, if I 3D printed a Space Marine and I put it on the table and I said, oh yeah, that's an official Games Workshop thing, and it was naff because I didn't know what I was doing with 3D printer, and then that hurts GW's brand.
That's kind of what I'm thinking with these as well.
Yeah, so there's, and fair play to the guys. They've done a lot of work on what they.
I would recommend to anyone to download those PDFs and have copies of those. I think
and you know what, you might not agree with all of it because I don't, and that's fine. That's cool, but it's there
doesn't diminish the work, does it?
No, it's there to use and not use as you wish, and that's fine. And you know what? That's different. Never mind that. But the GW, they just can't let it happen. At the end of the day, they just cannot let it happen, and it's not a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. But and it's a shame. I mean, these books are now selling for more than they were selling for, as anything does. As soon as it's OOP, that's it. And that's sort of testament to how well they've done as well, to be fair. But if they're
considered up in that kind of bracket,
and I've seen recently people making extras for models that Games Workshop make and using the Games Workshop terminology, and it's a dangerous path to tread. I kind of want to reach out to some people and say, just change it. Like, it's not worth, like the whole chapter house. The whole chapter house issue was, there was a bit of, Games Workshop, they don't do everything right, don't get me wrong, but chapter house were like, no, we're going to use salamanders on our thing because Games Workshop don't own the word salamanders. Well, they kind of have a reference between shoulder pads that are shaped exactly like that for use on 28mm toy soldiers and the word salamanders together. Like, that's something that they have developed over time and is, recognizable as something they do.
Why bother? Why bother challenging it?
So why bother? And I think it was almost a case of pride on their part. And there were some issues where they did win because Games Workshop didn't have models, and so Chapter House didn't. It's not they didn't. Games Workshop didn't win or lose, and Chapter House didn't win or lose. There were individual elements where they won or lost. The difference is Games Workshop, when Chapter House had to stop selling stuff because they were in the middle of a court case, Games Workshop have a lot of money behind them to back it up. And if you're going to go to court over something, it's going to cost money, even if people are working for you, almost for free. If you can't sell your stuff, then you're not going to make any money. So, there are times when the principle of the thing is worth fighting for, absolutely, and everyone's got to make their own mind up. But if you're going to make Space Soldier in space armor, you don't need to call him Space Wolf, Space Marine. Like, just
particularly not with the ease at which some of the message gets out now. I would say,
yeah,
the people are going to talk about that and make their own decisions on that, whereas you don't have to personally
and there
run the risks.
There was some talk about the timescales that it took to get the cease and desist, and the fact that certain people in GW must have known. And I'm like, well, if I was a sculptor in GW and I knew something small was going on, little, and it was with hobby, I might not mention it to my boss, right? And I'm sure that was the case, but it's more the fact that they don't just have a generic letter to send out. Everything is. It's got to be, it's got to be specific to the instance that's going on, and that takes time. And decisions need to be made, which usually take time as well. They need to look at it properly and everything else.
That would be a discussion, because if you ham-fist that, you could do your brand damage again.
Yeah.
You arguably do by doing it. I mean, there's probably a discussion there saying, do we actually do this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. At what point do we step in? At what point do we,
how much damage are we going to do in our community? Because
exactly.
They are undeniably more community focused than there's ever been.
Yeah, and any cease and desist will cause some people to get their backs up, and
absolutely.
It has. And people are like, no, screw it. Yeah. This is the last straw. I'm only buying stuff from China and whatever. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. They're not idiots. I mean, they're not idiots. They will know it will have an impact. It's just a question of how much. That's a judgment you have to make.
And also, and they can't also reach out and say, by the way, we really like what you're doing, but stop doing it. Really, it's a legal letter.
Not really.
Like, it's got to be.
Really.
Like, they can't seem to be given.
Can't be ambiguous. Yeah.
No, go ahead. So,
I can see why it's been done. It's okay. It's made it harder, but equally, you can get these things printed. It's just made it
exactly. You can still get them digitally. You can still get them printed. Like, it's a minor setback at the end of the day.
I think it would have been going considerably too far. It would be a very different conversation if they'd have somehow attempted to ban the PDFs. I don't know how you could. I don't know how you.
No, I don't think they could. I think they know they can't. I think old GW might have done, but they old GW seemed to believe they knew more about the law than they did. Certain people in the company, particularly, but
I think they paid the price for that too.
They did. They got really burned, and unfortunately, I think for a while we pay the price as well. As consumers, I think it's taken them a while to kind of work out how to move forwards in a way that works for everyone.
Yes, in a way that's overall positive. Yeah, agree.
Yeah, it feels like this has been a bit of a negative kind of thing, but this is a kind of I don't want this. This isn't.
It's us sort of reflecting on that decision.
Yeah,
again, applying some reason, trying to apply our own reason, and
just encouraging people
to see where it comes from.
And the thing is,
it doesn't stop people creating stuff.
The same goes. Yeah. What's important, I think, is the same goes for Patreon and things like that as well. I create stuff and people can download it, and I've got a Patreon if you want to support me. Well, essentially, you're getting paid to do stuff. Like, I don't know the exact legal kind of wranglings around that, but if that Patreon's supporting you in doing something with someone else's IP, that's probably going to be deemed to be the same sort of thing. So, and we talked about the guys doing the YouTube, the videos, the cartoons, the digital stuff.
Oh yes, yes.
That are now working for the company. Well, most of them had some sort of Patreon running, and
quite a lucrative one, I understand. Yeah.
There is a question of, well, they're making money off GWIP. GW look bad for telling them off. Do they offer them a job or a role for maybe only a period of time, whatever, with the agreement to then keep this whatever they've got live, but to take control of it, because otherwise, again, you're sitting there letting people make cartoons of your stuff, and they could be doing all kinds of stuff with it. And once you've let it go once, it becomes very hard to pull that back in.
Yeah, I think it is that it's a tricky world that they're going to be finding their feet in, like so many things. And I think it is something they have to do. When
it's and as I say, like, there are times when you should fight for principles and for the right thing. I think if I was setting up a company and I had this brilliant idea for extra guns for whatever it is to do with Games Workshop, I just wouldn't use their terminology. There's so many different ways to word stuff that everyone knows what you're talking about, but you're fine with it, and that's cool. So, for that extra little bit of effort to make your own names up, it just seems well worth it, because at the end of the day, we all benefit from having more options out there, whether it's rules or footage or models or parts, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're out there, it's parts in particular, I think is the thing. I need the base kit to do this. And
even if I don't use it, even if I don't use the stuff, the fact that you've got access to it improves my game.
Yeah, that's also true.
So it doesn't. You don't have to agree with everything else, but just the fact it's there improves the environment. So I kind of want this to be a cool. Do the thing. Just make sure you're doing the thing in a way that doesn't get you burned. Because of course, as well. I mean, I couldn't imagine getting a cease and desist letter in the post. Like, that initial kind of shock would be kind of weird.
Yeah, well, it could be. It
stressful.
Can be very. I mean, that's kind of the point. I mean, I've working in what I do. The legal part of it is a huge part of it in construction. It's by its very nature, and it's specifically designed to intimidate. It's the point. It's kind of that's how it works.
Legal language can't pull punches either.
No, absolutely.
So, like, even if it's not designed to be aggressive, it will be aggressive because it's stated facts and repercussions and whatever. So
So I think that's all one thing. I think they did the Mournival Events guys did what they had to do. We agree with that completely. They pulled that back, but they're still producing the product. You can still get it. You can still get the PDF. You can still read that. You can still print off your own copy, etc. And you could even go and have it prepared. I think, if you so wished, if you did it for private use, making money out of it is problematic for all the reasons we've just talked about. And you say, okay, I understand that, and then you can have one individual can have a view on whether they agree with it or not. That's fine.
It'd be interesting to see if there's a really good place out there in the UK for getting individual books made up, which isn't prohibitively expensive.
Yes, I mean, I found this. I mean, I had a far better appreciation for Games Workshop's card packs and the prices they charge for them when I promptly tried to. There's one card pack for Necromancer I missed, and I thought that's fine. I know how to use InDesign. I know how to create cards. I can use Illustrator, etc. Let's crack on. I'll just put the time in, make my own version, and I'm even going to have them printed up for myself in a fancy way. Yeah, the cost of printing a pack of cards, particularly in a non-standard size, although frankly printing them even in a standard size, with custom graphics, having them cut, etc., not cheap when you are doing them on an individual basis. And I think that's also true of books. Obviously, their quality and binding, etc., quality of printing, etc., now you've got more legwork to do, rather than just buying it from these guys who have done it off the shelf, already done all that legwork for you. Fine. Oh well, there you go. That's what you've got to do. That's and everyone's sources for such things will vary. I don't think there's a national seller of such things. The US seems to be far better at that than us. People seem to be able to say they go into these sort of local stationery shops, the equivalent of Staples kind of thing, and they seem to be able to have stuff spiral bound or laminated and spiral bound or far more readily than we do.
One shop I knew of which would spiral bind a book. I used to take my all my little mini rule books in there.
Yeah,
and they'd be like, "Oh, right,
exactly.
Yeah, cool, yeah."
And exactly, it's a local, isn't it? It's a local independent kind of thing. I mean, the places I can think of in London, nightmare for it. Trying to find places that do that, whereas they seem to have them on in not every street corner, but they seem to be pretty prominent when you hear people talk about it on Facebook and similar about having such things done in the US. Whereas here, I mean, the places I'm thinking of here in London, there used to be a place down in Old Street. You either had a choice of some place that they'd look at you like, sorry, can we print this on our laser printer, or get out and it will cost you a fortune, or you take it into another place that looks like it's binding books straight out of Harry Potter. It's like you can have your book bound or buy a wand. Had that kind of feel to it as a place. It's leather bound books only. So a bit fiddly to go and find places to do it for you, but it is still doable. And frankly, you're going to have it electronically anyway.
Yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? At the end of the day.
And we're here. We're just thinking through, well, what the implications are for that and what the motivations for that might be.
Indeed, and we want to encourage people to create.
Absolutely.
I wish I was better at it.
Yeah, that is still one of the benchmarks, I think, of that kind of quality of product.
Yeah, they put a lot of work in,
and it shows.
And the production of it is very good. Which is often a letdown on these kind of things. The actual final product.
Yeah.
And they haven't allowed that, which is really cool. Anyway, I think we should probably leave it there.
Yes, this question we've ended up discussing quite a lot in a time when there's only been
this is a proper ramble episode. Wonderful stuff. Cheers, Howard.
Cheers.
I'd like to welcome back to the show Mr. Andy O'Reilly. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm doing very well, Greg. Thanks a lot for having me back again.
Well, thanks for coming on. And we've got you on. Last show we had Colin talking about helping us talk about running events. And I thought, well, why not look at it from the other side? And there's going to be people out there who are going to be attending events maybe for the first time or maybe just irregularly, and I think sometimes it can be a little bit daunting for people, particularly for their first events. So we'll kind of have a look at kind of how we go about it, shall we?
Sounds good.
Excellent. So first things first, where do you find out about events?
So generally for me, it's on Facebook. So particularly playing 30k in Heresy, a lot of the community is on there already. So there are some dedicated Facebook pages for events in the UK, and you'll also see them get shared across various groups like Crusade and Heresy, or there's a few London specific groups as well, Capital Heresy, London Heresy, that share the events there. That's generally where I find out where the events are coming, and because as you said last session, like they're so kind of oversubscribed in a way, like you want to be on it to get, like they say, this is when it's going to go on, this is when the tickets are going to be, this is how many it's going to be, and so you get to see it in a one-stop shop kind of place.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of once you start going to events, if you're new to the Heresy scene particularly, you're not sure where to look, but once you've been in it a while, it becomes obvious where to look. So yeah, Crusade and Heresy, a lot gets shared in. There is a UK Horus Heresy events page. There's a worldwide Heresy events page, and then there will be local area ones, as you say, like London or New York or a state. So places like that are always good places. You'll find that a lot of event organisers are very keen to shout out their events. Some will do it every few days until it's sold out as well everywhere. And the same goes for Instagram and Twitter. You can see these events shouted out. But sometimes when you're new, it's a little bit harder, I think, just every now and then to find them. What you'll realise is, as with all gaming systems, there are usually a core set of people who organise like 90% of events that happen within an area. So in the UK, that I run events at various places. You've got King Fluff runs plenty, Greetings from the Warp, Edge of Empire run their couple, so do the Geno 5.2 used to, but they used to do as set ones as well. And you get things like that. So you tend to find names and then realise that they'll do 2 or 3 in a year, that kind of thing as well. So you start to just kind of by osmosis realise where you need to be looking almost. Podcasters can have a tendency to be involved in running because I think there's a nature of, we don't, well, if a podcaster tells you he hasn't got an ego, then ask them why they've got a podcast. Because at the end of the day, we think someone's listening to us. But there is an element of doing it for others as well. So you tend to get a bit of crossover with podcasters and event organisers. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. So there's always a good shout there. As you say,
there's a nice interplay there as well, because if you're listening to certain podcasts that talk about events as well, you get kind of some feedback after the event. You get to hear about it from the organizer's point of view. You get to hear about interesting stuff on the run up, and that can also help you get excited about attending an event.
Yes.
If you're hearing about terrain, or if you're hearing about the event pack that's being put together, or the missions, that's kind of really good for a new player to really kind of get confident or excited about, particularly attending their first event.
Yeah, and for first events, it can be really tricky, kind of knowing what to expect, and if you have a trusted podcaster that you listen to, whoever that is, and they say, I go to this event and I really like it, and these are the reasons I like it, and you gel with their opinions, then maybe you search for that event. Don't be afraid if you hear someone talking about events, say, oh, what event's that, where is it, how do I find out information? Because 99% of the time someone will go, oh, it's over here, just click on this and that'll give you thing, and keep an eye out here. That's the way things work, isn't it? It's word of mouth, and people are keen to spread the word, because it helps events stay full and fun and entertaining. And sometimes these small events, that's the way they grow. So Pete and his team down in Southampton doing I can't remember what the events are called now. Oh, my mind's gone blank.
They're the ones that held the juries in, aren't they?
Yeah, the Zone Mortalis events. Not Forgotten Legion, is it? No. Either way, mine's gone blank. But I heard about his events, and I was like, that sounds interesting. And then a few people went to his events and then say, actually, they're really good. And then all of a sudden, they're like, that's marked in my head as one I must keep an eye out for. There's without an organisation that an organisational structure to kind of monitor events, that you're never going to have a one-stop shop for finding out every event that happens. There are websites that have tried to do it, and I know there's War Games tournaments, one by Cerebros, who was going years, has been doing it for years, is basically off his own back, been trying to find out about whatever gaming events there are. People can submit to him, and he tries to put them in a calendar, but it's not comprehensive. The idea of some of these Facebook groups is to have a comprehensive place, but I find it a bit tricky, even with my bigger events, to put it on a worldwide Heresy events group, because how many people am I actually reaching that will travel to an event? And if you're doing a 20-man event in Cardiff, like, how much use of it is it telling everyone in Scotland, let alone Australia, that you're running a little 20-man event? Unlikely to get people to attending that far.
And you've probably got a core amount of people that will probably jump in on that anyway.
Exactly,
that kind of numbers. So you're just putting yourself up for, disappointing people in a way, if you're putting on a central website that someone's going to look at 2 months down the line and realise, the tickets went on sale and were sold out in 24 hours.
Yeah, so there's an element of that as well. If you have a local group, obviously, ask them. What events they go to, because one thing about events is they tend to be, for most people, they tend to be better when you have people there. If it's only has to be one or two usually, but they're a safety net that you don't feel like Billy No Mate's going, and even the most confident people can get apprehensive about going into a new venue and meeting new people for the first time.
Interestingly, my first event in Heresy, I went by myself, and it was your event in Cardiff about 5 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I'd previously been to. I'd come from 40k, so I was previously just really attending events either in London gaming clubs, or at Warhammer World, which were easy to find. They were quite frequent at the time as well at Warhammer World. And in my gaming club, a lot of people didn't go to 30k events, so I just kind of bit the bullet and went to one of yours, and it was difficult. It was intimidating as a beginner, particularly because it was going to Cardiff, and I don't drive, so I'm getting the train up to Cardiff, didn't know what to expect, didn't know what the scene was going to be like. And it was kind of a bit of had to bite the bullet really and take a bit of a leap of faith to get into the community. But it was nice having the kind of support of the podcast or the Facebook groups, a kind of new people were sharing or talking about going to the event, what they're going to be bringing, getting that kind of excitement. So you felt like you were a part of it even before you got there, which was nice.
Were you in the pub on the Friday night?
Yes.
You were. Excellent. Yeah, we had a poor shot girl coming around going, how do you, what are you guys here for?
Yeah, Cardiff on a Friday night was
I think I just said we're a bunch of guys who met online. And she looked at me very funny, and I was like, well, and I looked at Jason Mullins. I was like, oh, that's an American guy who I met in America but lives over here. And then this guy I don't know, and this guy I don't know. This guy I've met before once, and this guy I have no idea who he is. And she was looking at me like, what weird cult thing is this?
I think we were surrounded by like hen do's and stag do's.
Yes, yeah, we were.
It's Cardiff on a Friday night, so.
It's great fun. Yeah, but you're right. We talked last show about your event pack, kind of detailing stuff. You know, the fact that I'm a podcaster who then ran an event meant I'm guessing as a listener, you had a rough idea of what to expect.
Yeah,
attending.
Exactly. I understood that it was going to be, loyalist versus traitor. So that's the first kind of step change that you get from moving away from 40k events. You move it straight into that narrative sphere, and you're going to be playing against certain different types of armies, and you won't face other types. But it was good for me. It was really important to have a well-designed pack that told me what I needed to prepare. So what point level I was working towards, what type of missions we might be playing, just to understand what I needed to prepare in time for the event as well. Because probably a lot of people are like this, is that I need the event to kind of push me towards doing things, towards getting an army done. And more often than not now, I play sometimes in a gaming club, but more often than not, I get my games at events, really, because it's just kind of time and life gets in the way. So having a pack that tells you exactly what you're going to need for that 2-day weekend, what types of games you're going to play, the length, whatever, is really helpful.
Yeah, well, I think we can move on to that. It's kind of my next thing is, so you found an event and you think, okay, that sounds cool. That's somewhere I can get to. That's whatever. What's my next step? And my first thought is you read that pack. The amount of times I've thought, oh, that's an interesting, they're doing an event in London, say, and I'm like, I can get there that day and it's only there and it's really easy to get to. Brilliant. And I read the pack and go, not for me. Or, yes, brilliant, exactly what I want. And it should be there in the pack. And if it's not there in the pack, that's my first warning that maybe I don't want to go to this event. Maybe I want to find out, or maybe I'll see if someone's been to a previous event by these people to find out what it's like. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point, because travel comes into a point to look at here, because I don't have a car. I live in London, so I don't really need to have a car. And so when I get to events, whilst I can drive or could hire a car, I usually just take the train. So when I looked at your pack, I was like, great, 3,000 points. It's in Cardiff. Where's the venue? Is it near the train station? Yes, roughly so. I can get a combination here. So I'm thinking about planning my logistics of going to an event, and then thinking, what's the stuff I'm going to need to bring with me? Like 3,000 points. Great, I can probably fit that in one case, or one case in a backpack, and that's fine with some clothes. And that was perfect for me, because I could realise, I can put together this army, I can make it all infantry to try and reduce my kind of space that I'm bringing, put it in a case, bring it along, great. Whereas now when I look at events, sometimes there might be a shift to playing kind of multiple different points levels, going up 3,000, 3,500, 3,250, bringing a zone mortality force 1,500 as well, and that's
bringing a large piece of terrain.
Right, bringing a large piece of terrain, and that's great if you can do that. If you've got a car, you can put it all in the boot, and you can do all that stuff. And if you have all that amount of stuff, but actually, for me, I'm like, that's wonderful, but it doesn't really work for me, because I want something that's compact that enables me to travel and kind of bring my clothes and everything else I need for the weekend as well. And
it's these are straight off the top of the head things that you have to think about. As I say, if you don't drive, then things become that much more of an issue. If you look at the venue, sometimes you're like, okay, that's there, and actually, it could be, say, okay, it's over a bank holiday weekend, and wherever you are, that whatever end of that bank holiday weekend, they're always working on trains.
Yeah.
And actually, it's going to be a nightmare because there's going to be a bus replacement service, and I've got to travel with my kit, which, my bag, I can fit everything in, but it's still bulky. And then I'm going to have to traipse it halfway across the city to get from this train to this train because the bus is going to be doing it and whatever. So you've got all that as well. But you might read that pack and it might say, okay, this completely narrative event, the one in Cardiff that's just sold out, Return to Isfahan. You might think, oh, cool, there's an event on. Oh, and have not clicked, read the event pack, and it's Isfahan 3. So you can only bring the 4 legions that were there. Well, that's if you haven't got an army, are you prepared to make an army, or do you not go? Well, because I can't go. I haven't got an army that I can use for that event. That's fine, but I'm not going to paint a new one because I'm not quick enough. So that's taken into account. It might be that you are, particularly if you're new, or you just don't have huge amounts of money. Not all of us do have the money to spend on this hobby. You might have a very tight 3,000-ish point force that you use, and it involves Mortarion and a knight, or something like that. Whatever it is, you might have Mortarion and another named character in your force, and when you read the pack, it says that you have to reserve special named characters, and then you look down, and Mortarion and your other named character are both reserved, so you're not allowed to use them, and all of a sudden you've got to find another 800 points of army. And again, you might be like, I've got 4 weeks to do it. I haven't quite got the cash or the time to do it, or both. So reading the pack becomes an important part of preparing for an event. And from an event planner's point of view, we put that effort in so you can read it. So, and a good event pack will have all that information in that you need. And if you're reading that event pack, and as I say, you're like, actually, I'm not really sure where the venue is. Got a vague idea, and it says we're playing this many points, but here it says we're doing this many. And you forgive 1 or 2 little typos, but again, this is your time to ask those questions before you buy a ticket. It says this in this here, and then are we playing? There's something about Centurion. I've never heard of that. If you're new, those kind of things that you might think, this event's not for me.
Yeah,
just
you've
style.
got to ask those questions. You really do, because at the end of the day, it's about control from the other side, from the player as well. It's about understanding what they're going to need to do to prepare for this event, what they're going to be able to bring, and to get excited about attending that event, you need to know that you'll be able to put something together or have something from an existing force that you can throw down, because it takes time. Like as you say, it's an expensive hobby. You can't just buy another 800 points off the top of a hat. You've got to just kind of read the pack and understand, is this the event for me? Can I work within my existing force? Can I buy something new for it? Do I have the time? Is it what I want for a weekend?
Sure. And it could be things like you look at the demon armies now. Oh, okay, so it could say you're using Mournival event pack. And you go, well, I've never actually read it. I've heard a lot about it, and I know a couple of units because I've seen them been talked about or used. But what am I facing? Because I don't like. I'm one of those gamers. I don't mind to a point. I'm like, someone puts something down on the table. I'm like, just tell me roughly what it does. It's a shooting unit, but it can also do this. Okay, cool. That's fine. The amount of times someone's gone, oh, I've never, have you ever seen this unit? I'm like, nah. And they're like, well, it's a combat unit. Cool. Do you want to know about it? I'm like, just tell me what its threat range is and how hard does it hit. If it hits like a ton of bricks, cool. No worries. I know I've got to deal with it. I can work around that. That's fine. I've been playing games for a long time, and I don't need to know everything. Some people prefer to know everything. So if you're that kind of person, maybe you want to read that model event pack, even if you're not taking any of those models themselves. Some events will say you've got 3,000 point army, and you get an equivalent of a knight errant, which you need to make and build. And you're like, cool, no problem. I have no idea how the rules work. Well, maybe you want to familiarize yourself with those before you go to that event as well. So you want to look at all those little things, any kind of rules that are made up, because we play a lot of narrative events. There's a lot of rules, a lot of stuff gets thrown in. that is not normal.
Yeah, and you want to take the time to read that stuff over a couple of months, I'd say, just in a relaxed style before the event, not the day before.
No,
And,
I don't.
There's always going to be that kind of thing where, particularly when it's loyalist versus traitor, and if you're a newbie to events, you might not have played against Sons of Horus or Alpha Legion or whatever. You might not have played them in your gaming club, and you read around the rules. You know a little bit about what they do, and there's no shame in coming to the table and saying, I've never played against this legion before, or I'm relatively new.
Yeah, in fact, I think the amount of times I'm used to doing this from tournament, Warhammer and 40k, get to the table. If you play these guys much, play them all the time. No worries, cool, brilliant. Now, I've seen them a couple of times. I'm like, cool. Any questions before we start? Anything you need to know? No, cool. I've never played them. Okay, right. Here's my army, because you should always do this event anyway. We'll go through that. Here's my army. And they're looking at something like, and I'm like, okay, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Basically, this does this, this does this, this does this. There are, particularly because I had to do this in my Mechanicum a lot. Have you played Mechanicum before? Or a couple of times? Right. All their weapons work slightly differently to how you think they will. All the ranges are slightly different. So this unit can then, my Thalax can make movements in the assault phase, away from you, whatever, don't have to assault, blah, blah, blah. These units are tough. And, and I had to go through that stuff anyway, because even players who played against them a couple of times might not have played against an Arl attacks. How many people have played against an Arl attacks?
I still ask, whenever I face Mechanicum, I still say, oh, I know what some of these can do, but I can't really remember.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is, for Mechanicum, is trying to remember, like, every weapon is a slightly different range. So I always have to look it up. Now, if I'm using some fan-made rules, because the events say so, I get really conscious when I'm killing time in the game to look stuff up. Some people do, some people don't.
Yeah.
But I know that if I'm just flicking through a book trying to find stuff, that's not entertaining for anyone. I'm like, sorry, mate, I will find it. It's here. So I will try and go, right, I'll get the basics down so that I only need to look the odd thing up. And the amount of times when I've had a situation like that, and I've had like Phosphex bombs for the first time, and then kind of read them halfway through the game and gone, oh, I should have been using these.
Yeah.
Oh, these are good. Like, so there's a balance there as well. And as I say, so it might be that you look at these packs and go, you know what, I just want a kind of vanilla run-of-the-mill event. And this is what I try to do in my events, like rules-wise. I run them, Blood and Glory and London Heresy when I ran that, and my events. I was aiming for 60+ players, which is a decent amount, and for Heresy is a very good amount. London, we got 92 tickets sold. Blood and Glory, we want to start getting up to that again.
Yeah.
I want them to be the kind of event that can be people's first events. Listening to Ben Curry, who runs Blood and Glory, when he used to run events, we always used to suggest, if you're going to your first ever event, go to a Games Workshop one. Not necessarily because they're the best, but one, you get to play in Warhammer World, which is just, you should do that once in your hobby career.
Yeah.
But also, it will be by the book. So whatever game you're playing at home, you might not read everything right, but you've got all the information is standard.
Yeah.
And so it's an easy way to break in. And that's what I try with my events. But that doesn't mean to say that's, some people will be able to cope with more as well and will want more, very comfortable with it. But you just need to be aware of the event, I think.
Yeah, you have to be aware from the outset. And this can be a nice... I agree with you about attending Warhammer World initially. And you might find a lot of people playing 30k have done that when they play 40k as well, and that you do stick to standard missions, and that can be quite nice. And actually, that's nice to have in the pack as well, to have that understanding that you're going to play 5 games of standard Age of Darkness rulebook missions, or you might play 3 of those games, and then there might be 2 that will come up by the organizer on the day to look at with your opponent, just to kind of have a bit of mystery there, something that's a bit different. but something that's manageable for a new player and an experienced player.
Yeah, there's lots to look at in that respect. So I would say you're looking at an event, unless you know it sells. Yeah, the one exception to this is if you know it sells out in 5 minutes, maybe buy the ticket and, then say, "Oh, actually, you know." But that's I think that's fairly rare. So, but it's something to bear in mind. So as you said, paint an army. Leave yourself time. Is the key,
more time than you'd think. The amount of times I've had conversations with people and I thought, you know what, I can get this done in a month.
Sure.
I'll do, I've got 2 weekends and I've got, I can do 3 days a week after work, and this is fine. I can do that. And then 3 weeks down the line, you've done 1 assault squad and half a dreadnought. And you're like, oh my God, I've got so much work to do. And some people love that. Some people love that crunch to work, all the way right up until the event. We've got to go on Friday to get the train to Cardiff. So I'm going to be working till midnight or gone midnight on Thursday evening to get everything
or even Friday night in the hotel.
Right, bringing it with you, bringing your coat with you, working in the hotel. And some people love that, and that's part of the thrill for them. Like, get with a group of mates and they're all doing that. And that's cool. Other people, that's stressful for them. So I'd say just assign yourself more time than you think.
And if there's a list submission, aim for that as a rough date of getting most things done. And a lot of us have got more toys than, like, we're always looking at adding units for an event. So you can, at least that way you could go, right, list submission is Sunday the whatever. Brilliant. Okay, cool. Up to that point, I know I can always take this bit, but I want to get these done. At that list submission date, I've got 2 weeks to go. Right, what have I got to paint? 75 Marines. Okay, at that point, maybe I think of dropping 50 of those and finishing off these 20 and changing the list slightly before submitting it. It's frustrating when you get a list submitted and then all of a sudden you're a week down the line from all your lists and 5 people have gone, oh, I'm not going to finish. And you know what? Sometimes life happens and that's fine. If you're, don't ever be afraid. If you're like, yeah, I can easily do 20 Marines in 2 weeks. That's fine. That's slow for me. And then your car breaks down, work's called you in extra, suddenly your weekend's gone and you've ended up having to, help your granny out because she's like got an issue in her house, or, the kitchen's flooded, whatever. And you message me and say, look, life's hit me. I haven't done it. That's fine. When you get the person who says, like the day before, oh yeah, just I went to the pub and didn't get my list done, finished. Can I change everything? And I'm like, well, I've already assigned you a game based on what you're bringing to try and make it, narrative and fun between you two. It's frustrating. It's not the end of the world. It's just a bit frustrating. So I think there's an element of when you're the one thing you got to remember. We talked about this again last episode. You're a single player having an issue that they then have to take to an event organizer is like, yeah, cool, I've got this issue, I just want to do this. Brilliant. When 10 people do that for the event organizer, that's suddenly work. So don't be afraid to do it, but just have a little think about what you're doing.
You have to understand as well that the event organizer is often not some corporate machine. It's one guy or 2 guys that are doing it. So you have to look at it as if it's a kind of relationship between you as the event attendee and the event organizer. And often that organizer is trying to put together the best or the most narrative matchups, and even initially just for the first game or the second game, or trying to accommodate, beginners who might make themselves known and say, this is the first event I'm going to, so I'd like to try, this is what I'm bringing. I'd like to try and face these type of things or whatever. And so, you'll have an understanding that, I want to match this person with this type of list. So seeing that stuff come in advance, properly formatted, and not changed too close to the event is really helpful in terms of making the event a good experience for everyone and encouraging those players to come back again.
Yeah, and I never want to discourage someone from like going to the event organizer with an issue they've got. You have to do it. That's fine. That's cool. It's the silly little things which great on people. You come to me because something serious has happened, and you're like, sorry, I've ruined all your plans because this has happened. You know what? That's life. That's cool. whatever. You deal with what you've got to do. Let me handle my side of things. I've got all the time in the world from you. If you come to me and go, oh, just couldn't be bothered, so I'm going to do this, then I'm going to be a little bit peeved. Because I put in X amount of effort on top of my job and all my other commitments to try and do it, and you've just not given a damn about it. Right? There's a difference there, but also the more things you put on an event organizer have to organize whilst the event's going on, the less time they have to make sure the event runs smoothly and well. And there have been occasions where I've had to go, right, we're not doing that. I haven't got enough time to do X because I've got my printer doesn't want to talk to my computer. And on top of that, I've got 5 tables to rearrange. And then these 2 people on this table are having an issue because of whatever it is. And maybe it's not their fault, but I've still got to sort it. That's not a problem. That's cool. That's the stress and the stuff we enjoy sometimes as event organisers. But it can have an effect on the event itself. And none of the players want that either. And none of it's, they're not saying any of this is malicious. But everything you can do as a player to turn up on time, to be ready to play, to understand what you're doing, all that kind of stuff helps everything run smoother, and the event gets better because of that.
And that conversely is we talked about if you should attend a GW event before you attend a more local event. And that's the difference, right? Is they have a team of people that's running the event.
Paid to do it.
You can just rock up, things can change, they'll deal with it because they're a company with the backing of resources and manpower behind it to just adjust it on the fly, and they can bring staff members in to play games. They can
lend models.
Yeah, right, lend models, all that kind of stuff that you can't do if you're one person organising an event or 2 people.
They've also got a completely different department cooking food for them, and you go through and eat there, and the bar's handled by someone else, and all that jazz. So they've got a lot more resources to put in, and they don't have to worry about the tables, whether the table's going to turn up on time and all that kind of jazz. So you're right. They have that little bit element there, and if they get it wrong, and it's not your fault, and you've gone to them and you get to say, look, this isn't good enough. I think a lot of people will find it hard to say, actually, step up this when someone's putting on an event. You might not go to the next one, but that's a different story.
And also, the Games Workshop events are more expensive, I think, than normal events.
They are at the end of the day, because they as you say, they've got staff to cover and the food.
You're getting that kind of 3 course or 3 meals, I suppose, over the course of a weekend.
I think they're down to 2 now, but. Yeah, I think so. But they sometimes throw a quiz on and stuff in the evening.
Yes.
But you're paying for the privilege of playing at Warhammer World. Yeah, so most 2-day events will be in that 40 to 50 quid range, I think, for independents. Obviously vary depending on what you're doing and where you're going, but you'll be looking at 60, 65, I think, for maybe 70 for GW, depending on what event it is. But it is what it is. So travel. As you say, what do you use? Because I still now, depending on what army I've got. So my new Demons of the Ruinstorm army has a lot of Mercia miniatures models, which are bulky resin models, and they are heavy. And I normally carry my stuff in they're stored at home in a really useful box with some metallic stick-on sheet and some magnets.
Yeah.
And for your plastic Space Marine, perfect. Right? Yeah, they might slide around a bit, but if you knock them really hard, but then they're generally not going anywhere. My big resin ones, that's a bit of a different story. They need to be properly held down. What do you store and carry your models in?
So I've been historically using a mixture of battle foam cases and GW cases.
Cool.
So because
you're a foam man.
Pardon?
You're a foam man.
I am, although it seems that people are moving towards this idea of the really useful box, which you can put a magnet sheet down and kind of dip up in the same way. And if you're driving, you can put that in the back of a boot.
That's the difference,
that's
isn't it?
Wicked, right? You take it out, and then you bring it with you,
and you can carry that throughout the tournament, right? So packing up between games, you can just put it straight back in the box, and it feels
or put it on the lid. Yeah,
and that is perfect. And that's the lid is a key point, right? Because I've been using kind of GW cases and battle foam cases, so that's quite a lot. I might be taking 2 cases to an event with a backpack, so I'm kind of laden down like a bit of a pack horse, and that's fine. But one of the things that I learned early on is I bought a like a tray, like a dining hall table tray. They used to give these out at Warhammer World for the event for people to just carry their army in between tables, and it was so useful that I just picked one up of the internet, and I stuffed that in on top of the bag, so I can put everything in there and carry it in between. So I'm not packing it in between games. Whereas those people who have the really useful boxes, they can just slide it straight back in there and move it in between. So that's what I use at the moment. It's not ideal. When I first started attending events, I was using my Raven Guard, so it was pretty much all infantry, which meant I could get it in one. I got it in one case, and then I had Korax magnetized in like a biscuit tin, so he wasn't touching anything from the sides. So I had that in a rucksack, and it was great. It was fine. With my Blood Angels, there's more tanks, so obviously you need more protection for that. So I'm just carrying more stuff. So it is a consideration for me when I'm starting a new force, and I'm doing some word bearers and some demons at the moment. I am thinking, how am I going to transport this to an army, to an event, in a way that can be taken on the train, or somewhere that doesn't have a car. And obviously I do kind of hitch a lift sometimes to get some events with some friends now, which is really useful. But I always remember Blood and Glory a couple of years ago. Tom and myself went on a Friday night, and being complete idiots that we had no understanding that everyone would also be trying to get back home for the weekend,
right?
Friday night, and it was carnage on that train. We had our cases, and people were standing in the aisles, and it was just horrendous getting up to Derby on that train. And I thought, really wish I either had a more compact army. Tom was bringing custodians, so he had a small little battle phone case, or I was driving. So it is a consideration for me when I'm building a force, or when I'm looking to go somewhere as well, is how I'm going to transport it.
Definitely. The kind of extreme for me was going to Adepticon.
Right.
And what army do you take? And when I went over for Warhammer, I took a Demons army that fit almost exclusively into one KR box.
Right.
I think I had one thing in a different box. And I was just kind of lucky that it fit that way. When I go to Adepticon, I'm then deciding, do I play the big 3,000 point game? There's guy from Hate who goes to LVO every year, who takes his Warhound Titan, and he sorts that out. When I go to Adepticon, I make the decision because I'm so I've got a real strong foot in the Age of Sigmar community over at Adepticon, know the organisers and stuff very well, that I kind of do a bit of split time. So do I just take some Zone Mortalis Force over, which I did last time, and then borrow? I know I can borrow easily some Age of Sigmar stuff. So do I just take, again, 1 KR's worth? When I go next time, I've got my Custodes now, and I can very easily make a foot Custodes force and Sisters of Silence that will travel very easily. I'm lucky in that I live in the southeast of England. Basically, you have to drive unless you want to spend hours and hours on trains and get across London as well. The really useful box becomes in the back of the car, wedge it in so it doesn't slide around, and get your magnets right, and you're well away. With this new one, I think I was talking to the guys from Mercia, and I was like, how do you travel some of these huge models with big wings around? And they're like, really useful box, but an actual sheet of metal with no more nails to keep that to the ground, and some good magnets. So I need to invest in some better magnets.
So that's your plan then, is you're going to have a couple of those boxes, some deeper ones for the larger models. And then,
I've got a lot of. I'm still going to have bloodletters and like hounds and stuff in that army, and they can go as needed. Whether if if I can fit maybe all the big ones in one of those big boxes, I could just take a couple of trays of foam for those, or yes, there's lots of different methods for doing that. But those big models are going to need some serious magnetizing.
Before Demons came along, and they are the kind of the army which have those bigger models and some really lovely models that you can use from different parts of Games Workshop or wherever. It was things like the Dreadclaw, the Charybdis. How do you transport those models other than wearing them as a hat?
Yeah, Mastodon. How do you bring your super heavy? And you end up having a box just for your super heavy or whatever. And that, again, but that's just another thing to think. If you're already carrying your clothes for the weekend and your army in a bag, and then you've got another box that you have to carry around, it can be tiresome. You want to maybe you book a taxi from the train station to where you're staying when you get there, just to save you because you're tired after a Friday of work and all that jazz as well.
I've done that for sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the only other thing I've been looking at for stuff like, because I made sure, if I'm flying to America, I don't put my armies in the hold. I know people have done it, and with KR Box, if I had infantry, you can easily do it. That's fair enough. But I'm like, nope, that's going in my carry-on, and I'm holding it all the time. And sometimes I'll be holding my bag horizontal the whole time I'm picking it up and moving it around. So I know that I want it on me. But you have got the new kind of cases now where they're cases that are magnetized, like the A case, is it? And
there's the A case, and there's the tray. Battlefoam do one as well. It's like a sliding, like 3 sliding trays.
I'm not the biggest fan of Battlefoam and the way they do things as a company, as a head guy, shall we say? But you've got basically where these magnetized trays slide in. And then you can just slide those trays out. Haven't used them myself, but the principle's similar. Just making sure you're not swinging that bag around too violently, I suppose.
Yeah, the only issue is that often there just isn't enough height between those trays for some of the larger models. You have like Bellacor's just been released. If you want to use that in a demon army, the size of it is pretty big.
I may have one, and I'm maybe ordering a second one.
But there you go.
And I've got models bigger than him as well. Yeah, so it's and my resin models, they get heavy. If I put in, in a Demons of the Runestorm army, you can easily have 4, 5, 6 big models, and if they're all resin, it's going to get heavy after a while.
This is why people, when they look at an event pack, something like Zone Mortalis might appeal.
Absolutely.
1,500 points. And the other thing that's, I think it tends to be kind of missing in 30k or Heresy events, whereas it was more prevalent in 40k and old school fantasy, was doubles. There's not really kind of a doubles aspect to most events, and that could enable people to put together 1,500 points. That enables them to play a Zone Mortalis game and also take part in a doubles force.
Yeah, and I think we'll see. Will be interesting to see over the next year as things open up and progress, like kind of what changes we have in the scene. I know when I'm looking at things like Blood and Glory, the idea is over time to grow it to a point where it can be a multi-day con, even more than it is. And at that point, I've been talking with people about how we organise the event and including different styles of play across that event, and even having situations where, like Adepticon do, Saturday and Sunday there's a 3,000 point event going on, but there's also like a 2,500 point singles event on a Saturday and stuff like that, and then a doubles event on, and a Zone Mortalis event on, across 2 separate periods of time, so people can come in and join in lots of different stuff. So I do want to, it's definitely something I'm looking at moving forwards with events that I help run, and seeing what we can do with that as well, because there's lots that can be done in that respect. So we've got our model, we've done our list, we're prepared, we've read the pack, we've got our models painted, we've got them transported, we get to the event. Event etiquette, an event, how to attend an event. There are little things that I just see people not doing all the time. And as we said earlier, try and turn up on time and be present. It just makes everything that much more smooth. And if you turn up, there's usually a start time and then a first game time. That means your first game time is not the turn up time.
Yeah.
That means start the game then. If you've bought your army in foam trays and you've got 100 Iron Warriors on foot, it takes 3-4 minutes to get all those dudes out ready to even be deployed. Or it might be that actually you're like, and that's why you bring a tray so you can move it where you need to go. But if you're lucky and you can go straight to your table, maybe you can get them out ready. But then, not many people can do that at the table, and you might not have space depending on where you're playing as well. It might be that, for me, perfect thing is I get to a table, I take all my stuff out ready, so it's ready to go wherever I need to be, and then all the stuff I'm carrying that I don't need for the rest of the day, like there's usually a space to put that somewhere where you can keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I mean,
even if it's just under the table and you take it with you, but you're prepared.
Usually, it's unusual, isn't it, that you get to an event and you know what table you're on, so you just have to find somewhere else in the event to put stuff together. As long as you've got that time, because as soon as you start doing your event organizer kind of spiel at the start, and then people start moving, it's really hustle and bustle between tables. Everyone's carrying expensive models. No one wants to be bumping into each other. It's good to be prepared.
Yeah, and also then you can go and get a drink. Go and get some food. Go and meet your mates, have a chat. All those little bits. Go and look at what other people have got.
Yes, and that's a really good point, actually, because when you get to an event early and you're putting your stuff out, what's a really nice thing, particularly if you're a beginner or you're coming to an event by yourself, you don't know people. When you start putting your event out, people who might not have seen you before will naturally kind of gravitate towards, seeing models on a tray and going, oh, that's what you're bringing. You're bringing Alpha Legion. Cool. You're bringing Imperial Fist. Oh, I love the way you've done that yellow. And then immediately you're starting conversation with people. Immediately you're starting to get a flavour of the other attendees in the event. And that's really nice because you then track that throughout the weekend. Even if you're playing on the same side and you won't necessarily play against each other, you can then go, oh, how did your third game go, or whatever, because you've started that initial conversation by getting to an event early, which you don't if you just turn up at 9:30 and you're running straight to table 14 or whatever.
Also, I mean, I don't know, have you had many occasions where you've turned up at start time for game one time? Because I have. Travel gets in the way sometimes. It's it is what it is. It's stressful. It's like, oh shoot, sorry mate, because in my opinion, I try and write this in my packs. Your responsibility as a gamer is not just to know your rules and to play. It's to try and have fun on that table with that other person.
Yeah.
Because we're not playing a tournament. We're not, winning and losing doesn't take you through. This isn't professional sport in that respect. So when we're playing Heresy, it's about two people enjoying a game over a table. And if I turn up late, I'm already eating into the time we should be playing a game. But in my head, I'm thinking, oh, shoot, I'm late. Okay. All right, let me grab my stuff out, dude. Yeah, cool. Oh, I just need to get this. Oh, I just need to get this. And all of a sudden, it takes another 40 minutes to settle then.
Yeah,
after you get into the game.
And your opponent is feeding off that tension as well.
Yeah.
They're thinking, okay,
who's
everyone else is rolling dice. They're midway through top of turn one, and we haven't started yet. Should I say let's roll for warlord traits? Do I want to force this? I want to get good. I want to get good relationship here, but I also want to work to time because I really want to just get to lunch and have that lunch break. I want to play a game. Playing into lunch.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you've paid to play 5-6 games. You want to play games.
Yeah,
and you also don't it's frustrating, and every now and then it happens where a game is slow, but when you only get to turn 4 and the game's in the balance and then it's time up and you're like, you never got to see what would happen, and you can kind of talk about it afterwards, but it's a frustration. So
and that's something you handle that's a really difficult thing, I think, sometimes, because particularly game one, right, when you're going into lunch, and you get to that point where you're going, oh, do I really want to play through lunch? I like playing the game, but I also want to have a break because I've got 2 other games to come. Do I really want to? You have to have that conversation with your opponent about, do we play on a little bit or do we just call it? And that can be difficult.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. And if you do turn up late and this happens, it happens. You know, it just happens, and sometimes it's just no one's fault. You know, the trains get held up, or as you say, traffic, or whatever the reason is, it can happen. And there are usually ways of resolving this. There are usually things you can do to speed the game up as well. It has to be a conscious effort, but I think that comes, that comes with playing the game. Not everyone can do it. But I think experienced players should realise kind of like, hold on, like it's whatever time it is, we've got however long left and it's still turn 2, right? We need to snap with this, with the movement. Like, don't be quite so precise. Like, once your front guys move 6, cool, I don't really mind too much. Just as long as they're roughly the same, we can do that. Whereas if you have plenty of time, you do be more meticulous with your movement, that kind of thing. And settle that out. And maybe if you've got 45 minutes for lunch, maybe you can go, it's only going to take us 10 minutes. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Actually, and I, as an event organizer, I might come over and go, how you doing, guys? Yeah, we've only got 10 minutes. Cool. No worries. If you've got someone who can grab you your food or your drink or whatever, and maybe you can work around it that way. But the key to that is to talk to your opponent, which can be tricky.
Yeah.
So I used to play Warhammer events down in Brighton, was where I started going to events. And there was a guy there who I got to know very well after some time. And he was a fair bit shorter than me and quite reserved looking, outwardly kind of reserved. And we played like 3 times. And it was always good, tough games. And sometimes he played better than me. But there was always one point where my luck just failed. Like, I did my big killer charge into his unit. And then the dice just went blur. And then he's turned around and run me down, right? And the game's gone. And it's like, that shouldn't happen. I might not win, but like what happened there is just terrible luck and any chance is gone. And I used to get really frustrated. And I realised I'm like 6'2", shaved head, pretty much, wearing a football top. And this guy's 5'5", and not particularly physically built. And whoa, the way you interact. And luckily, I don't think he ever really took it that way, but it could easily be that I could intimidate the guy.
Yeah.
And I after a period of going to events, and it takes time sometimes. We learn things as we get older. I'm a very different person to what I was when I was 20. Some might say I'm not, but but I was like, hold on, I have to rein back here on these things. My frustrations have to come out a different way.
Yeah.
And when I talk to the guy, I'm opposite. Maybe I'll explain it. Maybe I'll say, I'm really frustrated. I'm really pissed off. I've seen people go, I just need some air. Right, let me walk outside for 2-3 minutes. I'll be back. It's nothing to do with you. I just need to go and get some air. I've made someone do that at an event before. It was great fun. But there's even if you're not communicating, there's a communication across the table. And the better you can communicate to get on the same kind of level, and it's give and take, the better games you'll have.
Absolutely. And there's an interesting side point that's just made me think about, which you might have encountered at events as well. And it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, is when you're playing against someone, it is really important you get that good relationship with the player. It's not a tournament, it's a narrative game. You want it to be a pleasant experience. And you have that occasion sometimes where, someone will come and they've gone with a bunch of mates, they all know each other, and their games might have finished earlier. And you have those people wandering over, and suddenly you're not playing against one person, you're playing against 3 people that are standing on that side, saying, oh, how's this going? Oh, who's done that there? What are you going to do about that? And actually, I think it's just important to be mindful of, talk about intimidation, about that kind of impact it has on players.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen, and it's weird. It's not weird. There's different levels of it. There are people who will come in and will actively say, oh, you're going to charge that guy?
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, hold on, mate. And I've seen people turn around and say, look, I'm playing this game. You rack off.
Yeah.
But there's also, as you say, there is, and that's the obvious one that people think of when they think, oh, mate's coming over, going, oh, yeah, you should smash it. You should do that. I don't see that very often. It does happen, but not very often. But you do also have the, oh, how's it going? And there's a genuine interest and a genuine desire to talk and whatever. But you're like, again, you're looking at your watch going, I've got 15 minutes left and a turn and a half to get in. and I'm looking at you and you're chatting to your mate and we're not getting on with things. And at those points, it's that acknowledgement of, and you'd hope that the person who's got his mates there will go, sorry, dude, we're short for time. Like, we'll talk about it afterwards, stay and watch, but like, we need to crack on with this. And it's not always easy to do. But the more you kind of chat, and that's where the beauty of when you get to that table, you say, "Hi, I'm Greg. How you doing? Yeah, cool. What's your name? Cool." I usually try and say, "Where are you from? What do you do?" If I don't know you, okay, what you brought. And I've learned, I've had to, and I still have to learn, because I'm the kind of guy who won't introduce my missus if I meet someone out on the street, just because I don't think about it.
Yeah.
Just like, it is rude, but it's not intentionally rude.
Yes.
I'm just like, this is a very short conversation. We'll be moving on.
Yeah.
So why are we doing that? And then she'll go, "You didn't introduce me." And I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't. You're right." And I do that all the time. So I kind of then make the kind of like, actually, get to know this guy, repeat their name, because at some point you're going to have to say their name during the event. All right, so try and get it in your head. I try and write that down now as well, because the amount of times I forget it.
Yeah.
And then going through your army is a way to start. Like, it tells you, it sorts out any issues you've got. So if someone goes, "Oh yeah, that unit are really filthy because they've got 10 las cannons," you go, "Oh no, mine haven't got the las cannons."
Right.
Right. Okay, cool. No worries. Sorted that out. So not only do you sort out the actual physical, like kind of the game state in itself, but you also start to get an idea of what they like, what they don't like, how things go. And all of a sudden you're developing a conversation, which is going to help you when you turn around and go, "Oh, like, I know it's my shooting phase, but this unit were just going to move up 6 inches. And I said I was going to do it and I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I just move them up there?" And I'm not talking about, "Oh, last turn I meant to shoot you," and I know you've had your turn since then, too late, or whatever. But if it's like, I'll point out and go, "You said you were going to charge that unit there, and you didn't charge it. Do you want to do that now?" Like, you build that, you break those barriers down, you build that rapport.
Yeah.
I find in the army section. And you can, and if you know you're good at talking to people, because some people aren't, and sometimes I can be terrible at it, but if you know you're good at it, you can be like, "Yep, these are my I don't know, Eben Keshig, and they've got a really good, like, this tournament so far, or this event, they've killed this and this and this, great on the charge. If they don't, might take them 5 turns to get there. Like, I've got to hope if they get there, they're really good."
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you've got this backward and forward then. Have you faced them before? Oh, right, yeah, no, like, mine do really well for some reason. Like, this unit over here, which everyone says is really powerful that I've got, mine never roll well. So forgive me if it's that one game, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, you're...
the impact that has is if you're having that good relationship and that good communication at the start of the game and in the pre-game, then when things do naturally... And it's a game, everyone wants to win at the end of the day. When things do naturally get tense, turn 4, turn 5, half an hour left on the clock, then having that set up, that initial good relationship, that good rapport from the start, means you're less likely to run into those tense situations of, "No, you can't do that," or "No, everyone on time." Like, do you know what I mean? And that's
absolutely.
That's really important.
Or if you play a rules different, if you play a rule a different way to someone else, and you haven't talked about it before. I mean, if you know you've got one of those units where there's a rules issue,
Yes,
and you're like, "Okay, these guys have got this rule now. Actually, this event's got an FAQ, and they're using this, and this is how it works." And just like that's how it works in this FAQ. You've got, so are you cool with that? Because that's the way it does work here. If you go, "Oh, they haven't got a rule for this, there's no FAQ about this, so how do you want to play it?" Little things like, I say it more when I'm playing Tournament Warhammer, but there's a line called flat on the green. Basically, dice are flat. They're either flat or they're not flat. And to the extreme, flat on the green means even if there's a piece of paper and it lands on that piece of paper, it doesn't count. It's got to be on the playing surface or designated area. So I'll sometimes have a dice box.
yes.
And I'll be like, if it's not in the dice box, like, it doesn't count. So if I roll a dice, it bounces out and it's a 6. I'm picking it up and re-rolling it. Doesn't matter. and you get, because otherwise you get to those, that's cocked, it's not cocked, you can get like, and that's an extreme example with the dice, but you can resolve issues before they've happened, before they become issues. And then as you say, when there's tense things there, and I've been lucky enough, I played South Coast GT, we were on table 6 or something, game 4, and using an army I hadn't used before this event, and playing against a really nice guy in Joe Purcell, and he got to the end and I'm like, I've forgotten a rule, and I rolled a dice and I was like, no, I can change that, I've got a 1 left in my pot, and I shouldn't have asked. This was me seeing I could have won the game and going, can I change that dice back? And he was like, he was trying to be a cool guy, and he's like, I'm not sure. And we sat there for about 3 or 4 minutes kind of discussing whether it should be allowed or not. And before I went, you know what? Actually, I shouldn't have even asked. I do apologise. I've already rolled a dice. So it's my own fault. Right? And he was like, I don't want the game to be decided that way. I said, no, it's my fault. Like, I have to live with the situation, what I've done here. Hopefully next turn I can turn it round. I shouldn't even have put you in that position where you're allowing me to win the game where you shouldn't have to, kind of thing. And even at the game he said, sorry. I said, look, I actually won it in the end. And I was like, I don't want to win a game and have you kind of walk away and go, well, I kind of let him do this, and I don't think he would have won had I hadn't done it. And even then, when we were cool, it's still a little bit of a, if I could go back in time and not do that, I'd do it.
It leaves a bad taste. It can leave a bad taste.
And this is 2 guys. We had a cracking game. It was a really tough game, and part of it was I was knackered because this army was all Zinch demons, and it was moving units, dragging them out of combat and putting them elsewhere, and one of those armies. I've mentally knackered and overstepped the mark. But on the same note, I know I've played in games, and I've done the same as well, where I've gone, right, I'm setting up 1, 2, 3, 4 charges, brilliant, shooting phase, cool, charges, 1, 2, 3, combat, whee, and they go, you forgot the 4th charge, and I'm like, I did, yeah. And on equal occasions, I reckon, in those kind of circumstances, I've gone, no, that's my fault, I've forgotten it, or someone's gone, you can, you said you were going to do it. Why would you not do it? Let's have it. And actually, there's the 40K scene in America have really started a push in their tournaments on intent, and I know that some of the ETC referees were starting this intent kind of push, where when an issue came up like that, and they would always say, well, technically you're right in not allowing him the charge, but you knew what his intent was, and you agreed to it, and you've come to this situation, and you're not going to let him have it. I will uphold the rule, but I'll also put a mark against you for sportsmanship.
Interesting. Very interesting. And is that helped by the fact they record a lot of their games?
I don't think they record. They record a few. I think there's a few high-profile cases which certainly helped it. Certainly highlighted the lack of sportsmanship in doing that kind of thing. There was the whole Tony issue, which was a real highlight that brought it even further into the conversation. But this kind of active approach to monitoring people's sports, which I actually think is a really good idea, particularly in competitive sports, this kind of pressure to say, yeah, you're well within your rights to do that, but it's a bit of a dick move.
Yeah, it just dials it down a bit, right? Because that tournament scene, it can get so amped up.
Yeah, but blood can rush to the head in any game, and misinterpretations can happen as well, and it can happen the other way. You can turn around and go, I meant to do that charge, and it's the opponent's movement phase, and he's already moved people, and you're like, well, you can't ask for it now. Like it's been 4 phases. Like there's a time limit on how far you can go back. So
you can also do a thing where you can work with someone if they miss a charge. You go, you should have done it, but then the next turn you'll say, remember,
do that charge.
Yeah. And you know what? If it's been every single turn, by turn 6, I don't think you have to remind them.
Yeah, right. Sometimes you do.
Exactly. But also, it comes to a point where it saves time when you're being actively you're actively working together in the game.
Yeah.
The amount of times I've watched a 20-minute turn where someone's just trying to work out where to put a model or a unit, and I've seen people try this, and I'm like, what are you trying to do? I want to put them in a situation where they block this, this, and this. Okay, cool. Let's help. Right, I'll get 3 tape measures out. And I'll go, well, you need to be 6 inches away from that one, 5 inches away from that one, 7 inches away from that one. Actually, yeah, you can be in a line there. And they're like, they kind of look at you like, why are you helping? I'm like, because you're going to get to this point, right? Because this is what you're trying to do. So rather than wait 20 minutes for it, let's just do it in 2. Or I say, I tried to stop you doing that. I've moved in a way where I don't think you can do it. Let's measure. Yeah, no, you can't fit there. You can't fit there. You can't fit there.
Yeah.
Right, and all of a sudden that 15-minute, 20-minute turn, which is lots of concentration, quite intense, has become, oh yeah. Right, and you can do that with things like line of sight, with which side of a vehicle are you hitting. If you've got a laser pointer, right, and they're trying to work out, they're trying to visualize where this isn't Adeptus Titanicus. We're not, pre-measuring's fine. So if they've got a model and they're trying to work out just to be in that, like, put the laser pointer down for them and let them do it, because they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So, there's lots of little things like that where intent is clear and you can just help things out. But I think, that's a huge topic. We talked about that for like 10 minutes now.
But I mean, it's a key point, right? Player interaction is at the end of the day.
And it's not easy for everyone. And we know that. And the biggest thing I think is when personalities clash. I've seen on the Warhammer scene a very nice guy been absolutely lambasted because he's very reserved and he plays a strong game.
Yeah.
And the person he's playing is very outgoing and felt that the other guy wasn't engaging with him and also was smashing him. And the story got put across, he just sat there with his sad on and he just blew me apart, didn't smile, didn't do any of this. And I talked to my mate and goes, oh, no, he's a lovely guy. Right? Sometimes you just clash. And there have been occasions where I've been at events and I've said, if I'm like, just don't draw me against that guy, please.
Yeah.
Because it won't be fun. And there's no harm in saying that. The way you say it is the thing. You don't stand up and say, I'm never playing you again.
Yeah.
I've had occasion with one bloke in 3 separate games has cheated me or tried to cheat me. And I walked over and just said, look, if we're this was a Warhammer tournament. I'm like, if we're table 1, right, I'll play the guy. But if we're table 30 and you can't fudge to draw like one space either way, then I'll just give him the win. I'm just not prepared to play him. And it's as rare as Rocking Horse. But sometimes there are 1 or 2 people in the whole worldwide heresy scene who I know I'm going to clash with.
Yeah, I mean, we've all had those situations.
Yeah, it doesn't mean either person's a problem.
No, it just means you just can't, personalities just don't gel, and that makes it more painful for both of the players, really, because you can't force that sometimes.
No, and that's where events that allow grudges. Like if you're 3 games in and you're like, okay, I'm knackered. I'm not feeling today. Like I've got a banging headache. Wake up on Sunday with a banging headache, and you're like, cool. I just want a really chilled out game. Okay, can I play Andy O'Reilly, please? Andy, do you want to play me? You want Grudge? Yeah, you want Grudge? Cool, awesome. Brilliant. That's one game sorted. And in fact, I'll find another one for the second one. Like that can be a fine reason to play Grudge. Yeah,
and I've done that as well, and it has been really nice, particularly like game 3 on a Saturday when it's like I'm tired and I just want to have a good game. I've played someone before, and we can have a little rematch or whatever. I did that with Colin, who you had on last show.
that very thing. We were like, yeah, we had a great time last time. Let's have another game this time, and it was just really nice and relaxing, and kind of ended the day in a nice way. But it's about having a mix, right? Because you don't want your whole tournament to be playing people you know.
Some people do. If that's your only event you're going to get to that year, maybe you do.
Right? Yeah, of course.
So again, but you're right. Yeah, meeting new people is part of this, and can be the best thing about what we do.
Yeah.
Like as I've said before on this, like all my best friends play war games. Like it's my main social circle now, and people at my wedding, probably as many came from wargaming as came from sport. And I play cricket and football regularly, and that kind of thing. And it can be for any reason. It can be I've played 3,000 Suns players in a row. As an event organizer with 60 people there, I might not realise that. It might have slipped through with everything else. And you might say, Greg, I just don't want to play another 1,000 Suns player. You know what?
Just don't put me in front of Magnus again.
We can arrange that. That's fine. That's cool. The amount of times where if a Space Wolves player and a 1,000 Suns player, and it's them more than anyone else, are at an event and they're like, we'll be playing each other then. And most of the time they're up for it.
Yeah.
Personally, I would be like, I don't want to play a 1,000 Suns player every first game of every event.
No.
Like, yeah, cool. That's one event in the Heresy. Like, let's do something else.
It's a funny thing about Heresy, and that's, one of the things is that, I'm doing a bit of a Word Bearers army now because I haven't played against like half of the legions.
Yep.
Because I've been playing Loyalist versus Traitor the whole time. So, I might have played the occasional game against an Imperial Fist, but I haven't played against Iron Hand, there's old Marines.
Again, that's another one. My events, I tend not to worry about being completely even now.
Yeah.
And if there are more traitors than loyalists, then traitors might play traitors. And if there are loyalists than loyalists, because there are occasions where they didn't get on. So,
and you ask that, don't you? You ask that of people, I think, in your pack. Am I right?
Yeah, let them know.
Are you happy?
I let them know. And and if someone comes up to me and goes, look, I'm an Imperial Fist player, I'm never going to fight against loyalists. I'm like, cool, right? I won't make you fight against loyalists. Yeah. If I know that I'm going to have to do it regularly, I might find a loyalist or, and say, look, do you mind if you want to play majority loyalist this event? It won't necessarily be all of it. Yeah. And again, I know certain players who will always say yes to me. So I can rely on certain ones, but I don't want to keep going back to them all the time. So I've had, was it Ross with Russ? Blood and Glory? Was it Ross? No, maybe someone else. Can't remember. Too long ago now. Where I had Russ hunting Primarchs who he thought
you had Tom.
Oh, it was Tom Whitbrook.
You had Tom Whitbrook, and then he ended up winning Best Traitor as the rules.
Yeah, because he thought other Primarchs were turning. You know, and there are ways of handling that as an EO. But actually, you're right. You only ever get to play half the armies. So, what's wrong with mixing? You're already playing an alternate Heresy. Unless you're specifically playing the events of the Heresy as they go through, you're already playing an alternative Heresy. So, not every event's going to do it, but some events, cool. Like, relish it because actually it changes the game up as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, I mean, I've grown a little bit because the amount of times I've played Alpha Legion. Alpha Legion are quite a popular army anyway.
Yeah.
But when I rock off the table, it's Alpha Legion again. Great. Like, it's fine. Like, I know what they're doing now, and it's always a fun experience, and their rules are cool. But sometimes you think, it'd be really nice to just play something different.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. Any last thoughts before we head off?
I think just feel, I don't know, if you're a new player that's listening to this, the two things I'd say is firstly, embrace Facebook if you can, as a kind of a resource for finding out about events. I'd say, the forums have kind of died down for Heresy, and it's difficult to find that information. So you kind of have to bite the bullet and get on those Facebook groups to find out what's going on. And the second thing I'd say is, it is intimidating to go to an event for the first time, but just go for it. You'll have a great time. There's always going to be people who want to chat to you. And once you've been to one, honestly, every time you go to another one, you bump into the same people, you catch up, and it's just really nice. So don't feel afraid to get involved.
Yeah, cool. My final point is if you know there's a local Heresy event within half an hour and get in contact with whoever's running it and saying, can I pop up? 99% of the time, they're going to say, yeah, fine. If you want to just go and experience, see what's going on before attending one, that's quite a good idea. So feel free to do that. If I'm running any event, people are more than free to come and have a look round and see what's going on and get a vibe for it.
Yeah.
Because and if that's the way that you then gently ease yourself in, then that's great. And introduce yourself. If you message the EO and say, "Can I come along and watch?" and then when you turn up, say, "Oh, hi, I emailed you," because that lets them know that you made it, but also that's a point of contact then where they might say, "Oh, what do you play?" Okay, cool, that guy's playing Imperial Fists. He's a really cool guy. Like, hi, this guy plays Imperial Fists. Whatever. And all of a sudden you might have a starting point there. Really cool.
Cool.
Awesome,
man. Hopefully as things start opening up, there'll be more events coming up.
Indeed. It's going to be a wild time. I think it's going to be a lot.
I think so as well. I think it's going to be excellent. There's going to be loads of stuff coming up, and I can't wait, to be honest.
No, absolutely. Thank you for joining me, Andy.
Thank you, Greg. Always a pleasure.
What's a Geek Shield? Is it like a Breacher Shield?
Not exactly. Geek Shield is an insurance service giving you hobby rewards along the way. We appreciate that life insurance is a bore, so we wanted to make things a little more exciting with rewards that matter to you. Cool, right?
Okay, so why life insurance? I have feel no pain. Isn't that enough?
Very different thing. Life insurance can be used to settle off your mortgage, help with raising your children, or cover your funeral costs. It's never going to save you, but it will save your loved ones from financial disaster. Here's what some of our customers have to say.
Pete really will give his all to try and find a better policy for cheaper and give you vouchers. Why would you not do it?
It's great to know I have security for my family. Of that, I am certain.
Thanks to Geek Shield, my wife now questions if I'm still worth more alive.
Thanks to Geek Shield, I get to murder my family in the name of the dark gods and get all the money.
Yeah. So head over to geekshield.co.uk to book your free consultation today. Terms and conditions apply. Geek Shield is not a physical shield, nor will it save you from the Primordial Annihilator.
You've made it to the end of another episode of The Imperial Truth. Thank you for listening. First off, I want to say a thank you to any new patrons that joined us. Some joined from the show, some joined from Full Stride, some do both. But I just want to say a big thank you for that. We've had a few sign-ups recently, and it's very much appreciated. Helps us buy this new equipment. I've got some more to buy. I might as well talk about that. I realised in editing I need to get a slightly better set. So I've got the mic. I need to now set up how I'm using it. I'm still learning a bit, so apologies from that. I do realise there's a bit of, I need a pop filter in here. There were a few plosives on some P's and things like that, and that can be really annoying. So that's something I am going to be sorting out. Fingers crossed for next show. Also, some other sounds that were going on as well. The site I'm using to record, I need to play around. I think I might have said this last time. I need to play around a little bit more with a few others just to get the one that works really well. So there's a little bit of tinkering that comes through on the show. I'm trying to get it done as soon as I possibly can. So thank you for bearing with me on that. That might take a little bit longer than usual. This episode's late because I fell ill, which meant we really missed a recording date, which then got pushed back 4 or 5 days, which then pushed everything else back. So again, that's all my fault for getting ill. But going forwards, I'm going to try and get back onto schedule. However, at work we're moving our branch, so that means that I will be putting in extra hours on weekends and some evenings possibly, and a whole bank holiday weekend is being lost working, so there may be some delays because of that, and then therefore some delays in some other bits as well, but I will try I can't give up everything to do this, unfortunately. It just doesn't pay that much. So we have to do the evil and go to work. But so bear with me. We'll get you some good content out. Hopefully this episode was decent content. It turned into a really rambly chat with Howard right at the start, as Howard and I know that. But hopefully we've addressed things there that people are thinking about. We're going to get some more content at some point this year as well. Like we've gone through a whole year of lockdown of no playing. Events are coming. Like, I'm hoping that I'm in for Age of Empires, Company of Legends in September. So, we're going to start our gaming club, as I say, is opening soon. Hopefully more opportunity there will help feed that, because it does, as we said in that episode, it all helps feed together and keep things going. Saying that, we've done 2 episodes now on events, or from either side of the coin. One thing I do want to do, and meant to do last show actually, is if you've got any questions about events, about setting them up, about running them, about attending them, about what to do, expectations, or whether you think that across the line we've done things very differently than the way you would do, and you have alternatives, or you think we're wrong about certain aspects, then please get in touch. I'll put the call out on the social media before we end up recording as well. But we'll do a bit of a question and answer session, I think, and try and have a look at different ways of doing things and see what other people's experiences are, because there is no one right way to do this, and everyone is looking for different things, and as a bloke or as 2 people talking on a podcast, we're not going to cover all of those. So, as I say, feel free to get in contact if you've got any other questions as well, any other bits of information, requests, then feel free. greg@theimperialtruth.com, or you can come by the Facebook page. You can get us Twitter, imperial_truth, at Charlefang on Twitter and on Instagram as well. I will try and post. Not many people are reminding me to try and post stuff, but again, you can nudge me for that as well. I do not mind. But I think that's covered most of the basics. So we'll leave it there. Until next time, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.